And let the record show that all council members are present. And I do have a speaker card.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, can I, before Brad speaks, give the disclosures that we need to on some of these closed session items? Under item D, there are not 3 potential cases we need to discuss, just 2. Then of the remaining 2, the first relates to a demand for relief from sewer connection fees and potential litigation under the Mitigation Fee Act relating to 1410 Calle Mirador. And as to the second item, potential litigation, we need to talk about correspondence from the Department of Justice raising concern about ADA compliance with the city's Lift Butterfly contractors.
Thank you for
Mr.
that.
Malamud?
I could try to be short. I've already addressed this, I think, 2 council meetings in a row. Item B, real property negotiations is improper. It's a Brown Act violation. I don't want to have to go to court to stop this. When you have a negotiator, you can only give them instructions. You can't keep meeting every 2 weeks with them, and you guys are violating the law. And as far as I can tell, nobody will confirm it, we're under an agreement now. There are no negotiations going on, so this is a ruse, and I would expect council to stop this from going on in closed session. If you're just discussing what to do with the property, that is properly a public discussion, not a private discussion. So B needs to be terminated. Now, as far as C, again, no parties disclosed. Given what Scott said now, I'm okay with that. But on D, because the names of the parties are not disclosed and the documents are not present at council, that it's required under the Brown Act to discuss these in closed session, these items cannot be heard tonight because there wasn't sufficient notice to the public that these 2 items and the parties and the documents. So these 2 items cannot be discussed tonight. If they are, then we'll be in court. But ask Scott, the failure to disclose means there wasn't 72-hour notice of these for the public to show up if they wanted to discuss it with you guys. So I just really oppose the fact that this council is playing fast and loose with the rules if they go into these 3 items tonight and discuss them. And we shouldn't have to litigate to have you follow the Brown Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malamud. Any comments before we go to closed session? I'll have one. Go ahead.
City Attorney, could you maybe elaborate why item B with the property negotiations can be held in closed session?
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember Ferguson. I agree with Mr. Malamud's characterization of that exception, and without disclosing the content of what we want to discuss, the settlement agreement with Memorial Care does allow this. It does contemplate the city and Memorial Care entering into discussions about the ultimate disposition of that site, including its purchase or lease by the city or a third party that we facilitate. So I think it's justified there. It's contemplated under the settlement agreement. As to the other ones, if I could, Dan, I'm supposed to disclose when there's exposure litigation. Let's see, facts and circumstances relating to an incident, disaster, or transactional occurrence that might result in litigation against the agency, which facts and circumstances shall be publicly stated on the agenda or announced. And so I think our announcement of those facts and circumstances, I appreciate the cue and the scrutiny, but that satisfies the requirement that they be announced under that provision relating to disclosure.
The announcement's 72-hour announcement, not
Brad.
at the meeting.
Ask you,
So
you're,
wrong.
okay, but Brad,
Kick me out. Dan.
don't outburst. I mean, come on. You ask us to follow the rules, you got to do the same.
Then give
It's
me
got to
a
be,
chance to respond.
Brad, it's got to be a 2-way street. You had a chance to
It's only
speak.
one-way street, Dan.
So I'm going to make my my recusal announcement here. So with regard to closed session item B and presentation item 1C, I feel I need to disclose that I learned yesterday that attorneys from Shepard Mullins Los Angeles office are representing Memorial Care in unrelated work related to employment matters. So unfortunately, even though the work, and I brought this to Scott's attention yesterday, even though the work is done by different lawyers in a different office related to matters that are completely unrelated to anything in San Clemente, I feel it's best to recuse myself for now so that I can seek guidance from the FPPC on how and when and to what degree I can participate. So I'm going to recuse myself from those items.
I just need to clarify a point of order. So does that serve as our first notification to the individual who interrupted the meeting, that we've now made clear what the rules are and there will be no future interruptions?
It does.
Okay.
I know that I will appeal the motion. and get my case, and you'll waste a lot of time.
Okay, so Scott, I just want to clarify, what's the first step that we have to take in outbursts?
That's a step that's happened. After that, there's the requirement to ask Mr. Malamud.
Then I get to
So
follow the
no,
procedures
you
of
don't. So Brad,
1201-11.
the procedure is this. The procedure is you get to write on a card your point of order.
No.
You can present it.
1201-11, pull it out, Dan. I get to
Present
appeal,
it.
I get to appeal your decision and give my defense. I'm not making a point of order. You're saying you noticed me to be kicked out. You
Appeal.
didn't.
I did. I just noticed.
Then I get a
You
right to
noticed me again.
speak. Pull out 1211, he's got it in front of him. I get the right to speak.
Speak now for your appeal.
I will.
Go. You have
Okay.
3 minutes.
Okay, you said I have the right to be a two-way street. That was a one-way street. The notice was, the whole point of a notice to the public is 72-hour notice. Now, I
So
get a
Brad,
right to
I'm gonna-
speak, and there's no time limit on it,
I'm going to
Dan.
direct you again. to
I'm
your
sorry, I get
appeal.
to
You get to
speak.
direct to your appeal, not to what was said previously. What is
I'm
your-
directing
what
my
is your
appeal. Your
regarding your notification?
your position that I can't speak is wrong. I get the right to
You
speak
get
to...
to outburst during meetings.
I do.
No, you don't.
I do until you state I can't.
I just did.
And then
Still outburst.
that doesn't make you grounds for kicking me out the next time I do unless you hear an appeal process,
I'm
which is
trying
what
to
we're
hear
part
you.
of now, and you keep interrupting me.
Trying to hear
Our
your
rules
appeal.
say you can't interrupt me while I'm speaking.
Says I can interrupt a point of order and I can give
I'm
you
not
more
making a
time.
point of order. This isn't a point of order, Dan. This is a 120111 statement, which is your motion, and you can read, we did that in our Malamud versus whatever, you can read the new rules, you can ask Scott, and I'm going to ask Scott for a clarification because that's what the rules require. The rules state that I get to state, any speaker that gets warned gets to know the basis of your warning, which you get to provide me in full, then I get to appeal your decision to the council and the city attorney. I'm going to do both. Because if you're going to have a kangaroo court and say that he can say that we don't have to give notice to the public, we can just do it every day at council, that defeats the whole purpose of the Brown Act of 72-hour notice. So if you're going to run a kangaroo court, Dan, then the city's going to know it, and that's going to be the first thing I'm going to spike on the internet tonight, that this city does not want to hear from the public. They don't want to notify the public the matters, and it appears that you know the matter that's wide in 1C, and that wasn't disclosed either since you recused yourself from it. So you know the parties to it before the meeting, which also is
It's a
questionable.
public session, Brad. 1C. Public.
I know,
Publicly
but that's
agendized.
not, it doesn't tell us who the party is. So we don't know who the parties are, but you know who the parties are before the meeting.
I'm going to
So-
ask you to, okay.
So since your lawyers know how to disclose, that party should be disclosed tonight also.
Special presentations,
Yeah.
item 1. Special presentation, item C. On the public agenda, Brad, if you would take the time.
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about 1C here, which is also
Let me know
C.
when you're done.
I'm done.
Okay. Please take a seat. If you would give us a chance to address your points before blurting out or rushing out, and you would listen instead of always just talking, you would hear these things. It's not a kangaroo court, Brad. You hold us to different rules and tasks. We try to address those, but as soon as we call you on speaking out of turn in public, which, by the way, you've written cards to me when other people did it, calling them out on it, but yet you refuse to comply. I'll make a motion for the appeal to deny it.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No. And I'm recusing myself again, this closed session, as I did last time. I'm just going to err on the side of caution on item B with the Saddleback Memorial Care and other agents under negotiation.
Okay, so just for clarification, thanks for allowing the appeal to go through. What is the next step? that we
Okay,
can
so
take?
can I read the rule, and then
Absolutely.
we'll all know where we're to, at least I'll know. Prior to removing anyone from a meeting, this is section 4.4.12. The mayor shall, or other designated chair, shall notify the person that he, she is in violation of this section. Specify the behavior giving rise to that conclusion. Mr. Bain explained that when a speaker's opportunity to speak is over and the council's speaking, members of the public are not allowed to speak over the council. At that point, I think that's been explained, but just to bring it home, we just did it again. Then they need to the mayor needs to notify the person that if the conduct continues, he, she will be removed. The person receiving such notification shall be asked if she and he understands the conclusion, but shall not be required to explain it. I think we skipped that step, Mr. Bain. We could
Yeah,
ask
so,
Mr.
Mr.
Malamud if
Malamud,
he
do you
understands.
understand that if you,
No, I don't.
okay, do you need to explain again that you can't speak when it is not your turn to speak? When you've given your 3 minutes, it's now our turn to speak. Do not speak over us, do not speak when other people are speaking. Do you understand that?
Seems reasonable.
Thank you.
After that, the Speaker has the ability to ask the mayor to consult with the city attorney on the grounds. I think that we've done that, and to submit a point of order, which has been done. After that, I am supposed to confirm with the mayor that I believe the mayor's action is consistent with applicable law. And I think this one's pretty easy, that when a speaker's opportunity is over and the clock's ticked down, they're not supposed to speak anymore, especially while the council's deliberating. So I think that's it on that issue. The next step is it's all over. The person can be removed from the meeting.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0.
Dan, we found an invocator. So
Oh, good.
we got it.
Well, Councilwoman All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order.
The City of San Clemente respects the many people of different faiths who reside here. The City Council historically begins its session with an invocation offered by one of the religious leaders of our community with full appreciation of our shared belief that we are one nation under God. And while the city cannot endorse any particular religion, we respect the religious freedom and freedom of expression of all our citizens to pray as they feel led to pray. This evening's invocation will be given by Jim Davis, chaplain with the Orange County Sheriff's Department.
Hey, if you could all rise for the invocation and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Chris Ham.
Shall we pray? Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful city of San Clemente. We pray your blessing upon the families that are living here. We pray your blessing upon our schools, our teachers, administrators, most of all our students. We pray your divine protection on our firefighters and our deputies. Watch over all of them, we pray. And give our city council wisdom with the issues at hand with homeless and so forth, God. We really need your help, and we pray your blessing. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Ferguson. Here. Councilmember Ham. Here. Councilmember Ward. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Bain.
Here.
The first item on the agenda is the results of the special municipal election held on November 5th. A special municipal election was held in the city of San Clemente on November 5th, 2019, for the purpose of electing one member of the city council for a term of 1 year to fill the remainder of the term created by the death of Steve Swartz. In accordance with council direction, the city's special municipal election was conducted by the Orange County Registrar of Voters as an all-mail ballot election. 37.2% of San Clemente's registered voters cast ballots in this election. 5 candidates appeared on the ballot in the following order: Christina Selter, Dee Coleman, Michael Mickey McLean, Jackson Hinkle, and Gene James. Gene James was the candidate who received the highest number of votes. Due to a pre-planned family event, Councilmember-elect James is unable to attend today's meeting to be inducted into office. However, I will be administering the oath of office to him at his earliest opportunity after council declares the election results, so that he is eligible to participate in the closed session on October 3rd. For ceremonial purposes, I will again administer the oath of office to Councilmember James at the public portion of the December 3rd council meeting. Pursuant to council policy and procedure, council will also at that time appoint a mayor and mayor pro tem. And at this time, I believe we have a speaker card that I will be asking council to adopt a resolution reciting the fact of the election, declaring the results, and such other matters as provided by law. So,
Great.
Any questions?
Any questions, comments? Nope. I think our speaker card is ready. Our speaker is ready. Mr. Bieber?
Yes, this is one of the most wild, historic, and exciting elections in recent history. It wasn't close. It was a landslide of 3,500 votes. And I suspect if it would have been a nail-biter, maybe by 9 votes or so, maybe Councilman Ham or Kathy Ward would have made a motion to have the city fund a recount like you've done in the past. But it wasn't. It was a landslide. It was so bizarre, and it's funny because when I was on speaking terms with Little Jackson, I actually called him and encouraged him to run. Strategically, it would be great because he had a pretty solid base. He was a Democrat, good name ID, and he would draw off whoever Kathy Ward and Bob and Wayne and the old guard put up. And of course, it would be a perfect siphon and would foil their plans. Never in a million years would I imagine that these folks would actually rally behind some child who graduated from high school just last year. And how weird and radical was he? Well, you thought he was a liberal, but to his core, somebody who was fundamentally flawed to represent this community. And that would go back to him taking a knee during the national anthem. That would go back to him boycotting the 4th of July to drive up to Los Angeles to take a picture of himself with his fist in the air, wearing a black shirt, protesting against borders. But what was so bizarre is that every once in a while, Kathy Ward comes out of her spider hole and gets on social media and throws rocks at me. During the campaign, she hearkened back to the OC Weekly and stated that, in referring to the article that exposed her as the source for the slanderous article, in which the author of it offered a very heartfelt apology to me, Councilmember Bain apologized to the community, specifically for the lies that Kathy Ward told him. She wrote, "The OC Weekly article was total lies. The article should have been entitled, 'How an OC Reporter Got Played by Jim Bieber.'" So what's kind of funny about this, when I was talking to Jackson, he says, "Oh, I'm endorsed by this person, that person, this person." I haven't asked Ward for her endorsement, and I don't know what I would do if I got it. She's so toxic. You're a sitting incumbent. You were the mayor, and even little Jackson didn't want you associated with his campaign. So let's get back to the article that was total lies. You never addressed it, and this is what the OC Weekly said. "Kathy Ward did not respond to several requests, phone calls, and emails over the course of a month to comment on this story. Then she replied last week saying, 'Send me your questions and I will think about answering your questions in writing.' We sent several, but never heard back. Bloom said Ward ghosted her as soon as the story was published." You could have replied, but again, you just kind of pop up and try to rewrite history that you weren't the source for that slanderous article. So anyway, looking back, you guys put everything you could, every endorsement, the city employees, firemen, money up the yang behind one of the most ridiculous candidates, and it couldn't have worked out better.
Mr. Loeffler, followed by Ryan Borg.
Okay, regarding the election, I just want to say I am really proud of the city of San Clemente. Oh, give yourselves a hand, and here's why. If you go right on the Register of Voters website, what they expect in a special election, and especially a mail-in election, they expect 10 to 20% return on votes. We got 37.5%. That's the community coming together here. We should be really proud of the hard work everybody did, and congratulations to all the candidates. It was a great campaign. It was very entertaining, and I think that's what got most people to come out. There is one thing I want to address, though, also. Oh, and by the way, what do you call 55% of the vote in a 5-person race? You call it a mandate. So just write that down. Is that right, Pamela? Pamela knows. Okay. So anyway, the other thing I wanted to address, though, is I remember a few months ago when the council was down to 4 people, the unfortunate passing of Mayor Schwartz. The community came together and put forth a plan that maybe we should put the next person in line in votes to be a council person, to have a full council. And I can't remember which 2 council people were against that, but, well, they came out and said they're not sure that the election would come out the same way. I mean, it could come out completely different, and they're right. Gene James got more votes than he did the last time, and Jackson Hagel got less. So you're right, it came out different completely. I look back and say how much different this could have been if we would have had a 5-person council. Maybe it would have been different, maybe it would have been. But here's the thing, a bunch of people have told me, well, the reason that they didn't want Gene James on the council is because they're contrary. They're afraid of him. They don't agree with him. They're afraid that there's going to be they're not going to have any relevance anymore in voting. I don't think that that's true. I think what it is I don't think, and I'll say it, Chris and Kathy, looking you right in the eye, I don't think you had your finger on the pulse of the community. I don't think you really realized, well, what else could it be? What the community felt. And when we tried to tell you, I just don't think you listened. And going forward, you're on the council. You both, by the way, I have voted for both of you. I have voted for both of you in past elections. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that I don't agree with you and don't think that you can represent us. But going forward, listen to the people. We will give you those little unsubtle hints. Have your finger on the pulse and represent the constituents. That's what we elected you for. Please do it. Let's not be divided. Let's come together. We've got a lot of issues coming up. And I have confidence that you can do it. Kathy, you've been to my house. We've chatted. You've done a lot of good work for us, in my little community. You know what we're talking about with the lawsuit you just were talking about, closed sessions. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor Schwartz. Let's go forward and let's kick ass in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
I wish I could be that animated. I'm just very dry. I wanted to express my relief, that, along with many residents that I know, that this current special election is over. I think it was a very divisive time. I think that it was very expensive, and I don't think it did much of a service to Mayor Schwarz's passing. I think that we all could have been above the belt and done a little bit better than that. The overwhelming majority of San Clemente residents have voted in Councilman-elect Gene James. We look forward to Gene serving the remainder of our late mayor's term. I think that the Bain, Ferguson, James trio can accomplish great things. Though garnering 30% of the vote, it's clear that the city wants life experience running the city and not blind, immature socialist ambition. I really hope that we don't have to endure a third attempt of Jackson Hinkle and the Mann Clan to try to change the direction of our city to be molded into the disaster that is many liberal cities in California, along with the state itself. We will not be a city that takes a knee. We will stand together to promote hard work and making the lives of our fellow residents the best that we can. So congratulations to Gene, and thank you to Dan and Laura for your endorsements to the right candidate. Many of us put all we could into this election, and we're very proud of the result. I really feel that God has his hands in the example that we make as a conservative city amongst the sea of leftist agendas.
Thank you. Any more speaker cards? Okay.
That's all.
I think that's all of our speakers. Do I have a motion? If not, I'll make the motion. I'll move that we adopt staff recommendation to adopt a resolution entitled, a resolution of the City of San Clemente, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, California, reciting the fact of the special election, municipal election held in the city on November 5th, 2019, declaring the results and such other matters as provided by law. Second. This motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. Special presentation?
Yes, next item is a toll road update.
So good evening, Mayor, Pro Tem, council members. Eric Sund, Assistant City Manager. Wanted to recap, we held a toll road town hall meeting on November 13th. We had a great turnout. We had a panel that consisted of representatives from Caltrans, TCA, Senator Bates, and Assemblyman Bill Breaux, as well as our Mayor Pro Tem Dan Bain moderating. And then we also had IBI there as well to provide some education to the public as it related to the project that Caltrans and TCA are moving forward on in the scoping process and the public comment process. I will communicate that we just learned today officially from TCA and Caltrans that they've extended the 30-day public comment period to now 60 days. However, I'll be covering a few points that we want to communicate in a letter to Caltrans in terms of asking for some other wants as well. We had an attendance of about 130 people that attended. Everyone that spoke from a public comment standpoint will be transcribed, and those transcriptions will be sent to Caltrans as part of the public comment process. I think it was overwhelming, the wants of the community, and I'll maybe let Mayor Pro Tem Dan Bain speak to that, and then I can cover some of the points in the letter that we'd like to give communication to the council on before we have the Mayor Pro Tem sign it.
Any other?
So I know you asked for 90. So what date does that put us at for 60 days? Do we know?
It's January 6th, I want to say. Yeah.
It's still a bad date. It's still, we all know nothing happens between Thanksgiving and New Year's in any of our fields, especially the legal field. But it's a bad time to have it end of January 6th. So would we consider still making a comment in that letter that date is inadequate?
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. I think we will make that comment, and just, do you want to go ahead and sort of read the points that we have in the letter? And I think that'd be
the points that we want to convey in the letter that we'll send to Caltrans is first and foremost that we would like the public commenting period for the preliminary draft screening criteria to be 90 days, not 60 days. 60 days is a good start, but 90 days really gets us past the holiday season and allows the public to have adequate time to communicate to the process. The second point, we'd like to suggest that the Caltrans support the county's efforts to explore the acceptable alignment to the Los Patronos Parkway extension. We don't think that there is any need to even have TCA look at this. The county has proposed this. We've seen through the IBI study that relief will be significant versus a tolled extension. And then the third point we'd like to communicate is that we'd like to see Orange County Transportation Authority be the lead agency as it relates to the 5 in the HOV lane, something that's already been carried out in the 2008 South County Major Investment Study that OCTA just recently updated in relation to that. Part of the letter, we would like to also speak to the fact that we believe that the TCA Caltrans process is legally legitimate, and we're currently in a lawsuit over those issues as well. And then the final point that we'd like to communicate is once they have done their process, we'd like to terminate the process after the scoping period ends. Spend no more money on potential alternatives that don't make sense and cost money and don't provide the relief that we want. So those are the elements of the letter that we're drafting, and we will be given to the Mayor Pro Tem to sign probably by the end of the week to get to Caltrans in the most post-haste manner.
Great. I think you mentioned too, right, that any alternatives that were pursued regarding arterials, we would want led by the county or OCTA, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And you should add in a normal planning process, right? That's what our county needs to return to.
Correct.
So I have a quick question. I was asked a question from a constituent that reached out. If we wanted to do a citywide initiative vote regarding approval for an alignment through the city of San Clemente, is that something that'd even be appropriate for an initiative? Could we look at that? Would that be helpful? Just asking a question because it was asked to me.
I think we could do an advisory vote. It would just be, Joanne, how much would that cost us to work through the register of voters?
For March?
For March or for next November?
November with the presidential election is always the least expensive. So let me see, I think,
If it's going to be like this last election, then definitely not.
I thought
No,
March
it would
was going
not
to be,
be that.
I
It
thought
would not-
March would be about $100,000.
Yeah, I think
that's
it's,
probably about right, because the primaries, the more people that are in the process, the cheaper. But definitely, the presidential elections are always the least expensive. My guess would be probably about $80,000, and we have to be in that anyway for the election of officers. So any additional ballot measures would just add $8,500 to the cost.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to, I just wanted to ask the question because it was asked of me and I want it out in the public. I mean, I think I'm pretty confident in saying that it's over 80 to 90% that are against any routes through San Clemente, but just wanted to get that out there, so.
I have a question regarding that. Perhaps the city attorney could respond. Advisory votes, aren't those for city projects, though, typically?
Typically, but what you would be, I think, looking at is just an advisory vote about amending the city's general plan to allow that to come through. So you'd ask whether you would want to do that in an advisory sense.
Okay, so.
But it would not be binding on
Wouldn't be binding, okay,
Caltrans per
that's,
se,
thank you.
yeah.
Okay, that's great.
And the last thing, everything that was presented at the Toll Road Town Hall is on the city's website under latest news, as well as under our Toll Road page as well for the public to access.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to council members who were able to be there. I know Chris was working and busy, but we know he was there in spirit with us. Thank you for everyone that showed up, for being respectful. I think that's incredibly important. We had a lot of people, Assemblyman Bro, Bates, a lot of other officials from different agencies that took time out of their day to come down and speak with us. They certainly weren't required to do that. We want to continue to encourage them to do that, so I thought the crowd was incredibly respectful, and I thank you all for that, and asked good questions, made great comments, which we will package and send on, so thanks to everyone that showed up for that. And if you still want to comment, it's all on the city website, and you're able to do so. All right, so our first speaker is Ryan. Pronounce your last name for me again, because I feel like I'm messing it up every time.
Bork.
Bork. All right,
B-O-R-K, just a fancy French spelling.
then I don't think I am messing it up then.
Nope, you don't mess it up. Something I want to say that wasn't mentioned tonight. So the Mission Viejo meeting for the public scoping meeting/input is actually tomorrow. So that's tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Please, everybody, at least who's here and online, please show up. I know that Kit Cole from the TCA has told me that they highly value people who physically come and speak during these meetings. Even though you do have the opportunity, if you go to the city's website or even the TCA's website, to submit comments that you have either in the mail or you may submit comments through an email address that they have set up. But I do think coming out as a city and coming out as an overwhelming majority, I think, can go a long way. So tomorrow is one of 2 scoping meetings, and even though they've moved it to 60 days, it's not like they've added additional scoping meetings. And I believe the other one is December 2nd. I think
December
I got that right.
4th. Oh,
4th? Okay, December 4th, but go to the city website.
Right.
You know, if you can't make tomorrow, then please try to make that one. I think it's in Dana Point.
yes, at the Ocean Institute.
I will note, you know, as a CPA at the town hall, I called for a forensic audit of the TCA. I hope the city pushes for some sort of audit in relation to their lawsuit with respect to more contracts than just Venture Strategic, so to really do a deep dive or at least have an outcry that they do. The TCA in South County's traffic relief effort, or SCTRE, with Caltrans is a disaster. I've studied every proposal and none of them seem to make any sense, even option 22. Pico and Vista Hermosa are not designed to absorb the rerouting of the proposed traffic. The only thing that seems to make sense to me is extending Crown Valley into Los Patrones Parkway, but that should be an OCTA initiative, not a TCA matter. I spoke to one of the lead engineers, and the conversation turned interesting. Lead engineers at the TCA made me aware that disclosure was given to all Rancho Mission Viejo home purchasers that Los Patrones can be handed over the TCA and converted to a toll road / extension of the 241. I think that that's bad. I think that all of their plans are aligned to do that. I don't think it makes any sense to build an above-ground toll road right next to Los Patrones Parkway so you can go 5 miles an hour faster and spend $5 to do it. I think that we should all be supporting Bill Bro's AB 1273, which limits the planning authority of the TCA. And I think that we should do all we can as a city to keep our distance from the TCA and our alignments with them.
Great, thanks, Mr. Bork.
I'll add one thing that he just reminded me. We also will be putting together a letter campaign for citizens to write in support of AB 1273 that'll be available on our website. We did learn that the item will be heard on January, I believe it's 20th of 2020, so it's coming back. And so as Assemblyman Bill Bro mentioned at the Toll Road Town Hall, those letters are important in terms of showing support. So we'll have that up in the next week or so for residents to write and sign and submit to the Assembly.
Yep, great. And to Mr. Bork's point, I know that Assemblyman Bro and Bates have been looking at audits at the state level, and I think continue to do that. So they've been fighting that front.
Do we have more speaker cards on this, or is Mr. Bork? So I just want to make a comment to Mr. Bork's comment about not partnering with the TCA. I know that our late mayor and yourself were on a subcommittee to discuss whether or not we were going to be partnering with organizations that partner with the TCA, and we're supposed to be hearing about that in December.
We don't have any subcommittee that still exists.
Yeah. So I was just going to see what the plan is moving forward, because I know that we did place that December deadline on ourselves.
So I think what we can do
Earlier in the
is,
year.
once Mr. James is seated, we can look at, along in conjunction with all of our other committees and things, and appoint it then. So I agree, we can move that along.
Great.
Excellent. So if you're okay, I'll move on to the homeless update. I have a couple of things to update very quickly. One of the things I know Councilmember Ferguson had brought forward in terms of providing some transparency is a cost that we've incurred thus far with our homeless efforts. So I'm going to kind of have 3 buckets of costs. So we have our legal costs, which that encompasses not only BBK, Jones Day, and some of the civil right as it relates to prosecution. We're upwards of approximately $390,000 since inception for those costs. The cost for camp setup, one-time costs, we're at about $76,000 in terms of different acquisitions, whether it's the tents, setting up the campsite, et cetera. And then on an ongoing basis, depending, and it's dramatically decreasing based on our population, which as of today, we have 6 campers in our campsite. We were at $30,000 a month. That includes security guard services, porta potty services. We do a monthly cleanup. But that I do see dropping significantly. We've reduced the number of porta potties, the frequency of service because of the number in the campsite. So again, it was around 30 ongoing. All of this information will be put online on our homeless page so that we can communicate to the public. We also were able to acquire a 3rd storage container that was delivered today. And I know that we had previous public speakers that indicated the view of some of the belongings and property that we didn't have room for have been put into the 3rd storage container, so that site next door to the campsite looks a lot more organized and orderly. And then there is a porta potty that is a contractor's that will be removed very shortly as well, that they were using for staging purposes. That's all I have for the homeless update. I just wanted to provide those costs so the public could be aware of it, and I'm ready to answer any questions if so.
Questions from the dais? Scott, any update?
No, nothing to add to that. Thank
So I'll
you.
just add then, yesterday was the deadline for the plaintiffs in the federal lawsuit to file an amended complaint. They did not do so, so the federal lawsuit is now done. They did file a state lawsuit that was separated from the federal lawsuit originally. They served us with that complaint, so we have Jones Day looking at if we're able to seek what's called an injunction against them pursuing that state lawsuit on grounds of res judicata, meaning the issues that were litigated in the state lawsuit are substantially similar to the ones in the federal lawsuit, which we won. So hopefully we'll have good news and an update on that as well. So thought I would mention that because yesterday was the court designated deadline for that. So, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. So we've also gotten wind that the Supreme Court will they'll decide on December 6th on whether or not, which is why I think that date's sticking in my head. We'll decide, because that's a big date for the community, whether or not they're going to pull up the Martin v. Boise and have that decision heard in probably April, if they decide to take it up. And we'll have a decision in that case by June. And if the court overturns Martin v. Boise, then you'll see a lot of cities being able to enforce their anti-camping ordinances again. So I think that's a big date everybody can circle on their calendar and think good thoughts on December 6th. Anything else? All right. All right, so we'll call up our speakers. The first one was in red ink, and I don't have a name. It just says, homeless camp is unpermitted development, from 303 via Pamplona. Come on up. And then Susan Smith. It's like Price is Right. And then Jenny Yoon.
Yes, it is unpermitted development. I actually have an issue number, CRM 1910-0154, that I had filed with the city that the due date's passed with the Code Enforcement Office on that issue. Haven't had any response yet. It still says it's under review. I believe that was, a copy of that was given to Mr. Makeshanoff, but, all right. We have a Coastal Commission letter that came to the city on the 15th of October. That letter followed a September 9th phone call between Mr. Schwing of the Coastal Commission and Cecilia. The letter from the 15th gave the city 14 days to respond if it was going to continue operating the site without pursuing a permit. I'm not aware of any communication back to the Coastal Commission. It was due on October 29th. The next due date from the Coastal Commission letters, December 14th, where a full coastal application is required. Again, the development that's unpermitted is on 380 East Avenue to Pico. The Coastal Commission states right here that it's a change of use, which is development under the Coastal Act that requires authorization pursuant to the Coastal Act. It says it right on the letter that's stamped with the city. I'd like to know who advised council that it was legal to set up that camp without a coastal development permit or without filing an application. I was told that it wasn't required back in June at a meeting, that you had reviewed it and there was no permit required, but Coastal says it is required. So why is that unpermitted development still operating? I don't understand why we're continuing with it. It's clear that it required a permit. It's operating without a permit. I went to your enforcement office to report that you have a development at that address that it has been developed without a permit. The city's required to give me a response in a week. They did not. It's part of your process. So again, residents aren't being listened to. I'd also like to tell you that in the coastal letter, I was very happy to see that they wrote, quote, The full coastal development permit process also provides for maximum public input and involvement, thus affording all interested parties in this matter the opportunity to find a mutually acceptable resolution. For everybody out there, I got a homeless camp right off my backyard, no notice.
Thank you. Next is Susan Smith, followed by Ginny Yoon, and then Ryan Bork.
Hi, Susan Smith. I would like to request the City Council immediately agendize and take action on the closure of the unpermitted Pico homeless encampment and its relocation to the FAM parking lot located in the SB2 zone at 1030 Calle Negocio, which has been offered to the city and is a designated zone for a homeless shelter. On November 5th, Dan, you challenged us to come back with a proposal for a site that does not require an EIR, which is ironic because the city of San Clemente has been warned it is in violation of the Coastal Act for never having completed the necessary permitting and environmental reports required at its current site, which potentially is the most environmentally sensitive area in all of San Clemente. The SB2 zone is the appropriate location for a homeless shelter and does not require an EIR report. The CCNRs for the business park already disclosed the possibility of a homeless shelter location in the area, as the site is already zoned for it. State and federal funds are available for the shelter in the SB2 zone. Speaking of, where are those SB2 zone funds? It's not the people's responsibility to solve our town's problems and come up with solutions that work for the entire town and safety of all of its residents. It's the responsibility of our elected officials. By placing the campground next door to homes, you place us in a position in which we have to defend our safety. Instead of being understanding or the least bit sympathetic to the dangers you have placed at our doorsteps, you have been confrontational and while sharing false narratives with the public, defending an illegal, unpermitted campground. Your false narratives last week encouraged your friend and supporter, Tony Robolino, to post a picture of me on Facebook's San Clemente Crime and Safety page with your false justification for the illegal and unpermitted campground, creating additional tension and division among city residents. These are the tactics used to bully, silence, and intimidate someone, and they won't work on me. The more you, Dan, or you, Scott, are condescending or confrontational with me, the more I know that I'm on the right side of the truth. Any negative attempts or comments to discredit me in person or online or videos taken of me while I'm standing in line will not be tolerated. They will only empower me and inspire me to become more committed, dedicated, focused, strong, and steadfast to relocating the camp to the appropriate location. I will rigorously and vigorously defend myself, my family, my neighbors, our children, our homes, the endangered animals, plants, and the preserve. I will continue seeking more truth, and I will continue exposing it. For every hater, there are so many other residents outside of Sea Summit who empathize and support me, so thank you very much. The camp isn't working. OCSD can't enforce our anti-camping ordinances because we do not have a shelter per the ruling of the Boise case. Pico Park and the ADA accessible trailhead to the preserve is closed. We have a camp with 6 people and additional camps all over San Clemente. It's time to relocate the camp.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
You mentioned
Thank you,
that
Ms.
if we
Smith.
brought you a proposal, the 4 of you would
Thank
be
you, Ms.
willing
Smith.
to jump on it.
Joanne,
It is
can you
in
please
front
turn
of you
off
now,
her-
and
can
now
turn
is
off
the
of
time
her
for you to
microphone, please?
agendize it and take action to implement it. Thank you.
Next is Ginny Yoon, followed by Ryan Bork, and then Susan Schisler.
My name is Jenny Yoon, and I'm a resident of San Clemente in Sea Summit. Since you opened the homeless camp on Pico last May, we have seen a dramatic increase in crime, trash, vandalism, noise, drugs, and other criminal behavior in and around our neighborhood. It has gotten so bad that we stopped using the trails and you had to close the children's playground at Pico Park. New homeless arrive every day from around the state and from around the country. And when you talk to them, they will say they were told by homeless advocates and by other police forces to go to San Clemente because it has a campsite. It is pretty clear that this campsite by the ocean and a liquor store is attracting more down here. At what point will you say enough? Dana Point, Irvine, Laguna Niguel, Newport Beach, what do they have in common? They do not have a homeless camp, and they certainly don't have one by the ocean. We don't want to be San Francisco or Los Angeles, but that is exactly what is happening to us as our homeless population soars. I've come here many times to advocate for common sense solutions. Please close the site to get the target off our backs from other cities, or move it to the FAM parking lot at 1030 Calle Negocio, which has been offered to San Clemente for that purpose. This location is in the SB2 zone, which is what you designated as appropriate for the homeless. The current location is not in an SB2 zone. It is, however, in a residential and environmentally sensitive area, and it is in violation of the Coastal Commission rules. The longer it stays on Pico, the more fines and damages San Clemente is likely to incur, not to mention the legal costs associated with potential lawsuits by environmental and neighborhood activists. San Clemente is fighting enough lawsuits as it is. As fiduciaries, you should guide the city to less lawsuits, not more. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ryan Bork, followed by Susan Schisler, and then Marcy Skinner.
I enjoy hearing myself talk. I just wanted to say $400,000 is a bit nuts. We could have given $7,000 to each occupant when we were at max capacity of approximately 70 people, which could have covered rent for a room for a year for each person. Now, I know that wasn't the intent to incur that much in costs, and I do get it. I wanted to commend council on the closure of Pico Park for maintenance. I hope that extra care and most importantly, time is taken before reopening the park. I hope it reopens after the Supreme Court hears Martin versus Boise. Grass takes a long time to grow if you want to start with seed, so that might be a good idea. I've done an about-face on council's handling of the homeless issue, with the except that I personally feel that we should still close the camp. I think steps that have been taken have been innovative in addressing how to make a bad situation better once the decision to open in a camp was made. I do commend the spending on statewide and federal legal efforts in this matter, whether that's spending monies for amicus briefs or Jones Day and so forth. I look forward to the Supreme Court's 12-6 decision to grant writ on the case, and I really hope that they do. I guess it's easy on this side of the dais to critique steps taken and decisions made, so again, I commend the effort expended to at least try to do what's best for San Clemente residents. So I wanted to recognize the hard work and leadership put forth, especially by Dan, Laura, and the rest of council, but I will say this just isn't working for us. We're all anxiously waiting to see what gets done once mid-next year comes around. A couple questions that I have. One, is the Coastal Commission an issue, and are we going to be fined? I know that was kind of spoken to, but I hear it coming up over and over again. And do we even have the ability to legally move the camp if that's an issue? And is the FAM parking lot even an option with respect to moving the camp? Do we even have the ability to move it legally?
Next is Susan Schisler, followed by Marcy Skinner, and then Doug Schaff.
Hi, I'm Susan Schisler. I live in Sea Summit. I'm a grandma, and I get to take care of my two small grandchildren while their mom and dad work. I'm here to say no on expanding Pico Campground to non-residents once again. It was a nightmare. I could not walk down Pico with my grandchildren without being screamed at, seeing drug deals, and stepping over trash. I am here to say yes to closing the Pico Campground. It is temporary, and we are 6 months into it. The damage to the habitat is continuing, and the health and safety of the many children in my neighborhood is being threatened. The campground is way too close to our homes. Last meeting, we were told to stop complaining unless we had a better option. I will never stop complaining when it comes to the safety of my grandchildren and the other children in my neighborhood. I do understand a better option has been found. The FAM parking lot located in the SB2 zone has been offered to the city. This allows for immediate relocation of the temporary campground, which has to be moved anyway, to a legal SB2 zone. No reports or studies need to be conducted. Please take this option and move the temporary campground. Thank you.
Next is Marcy Skinner, followed by Doug Schaff, and then Daryl McFan.
I want to thank Councilman Laura Ferguson for looking out for our entire community. We appreciate your voice and your actions. The campground concept was a wild card decision. It was something that hadn't been done in our city, and no one, including the council, knew the true consequences. Mayor Pro Tem Bain, you have asked us to be patient and to live to your commitment of 1 year. But the rules of the game keep changing, and we residents have no choice. The negative impact on our trails, our parks, our safety, and our values is far greater than we could have imagined. And bottom line, we had no choice. We are forced into compliance. First, our city allowed all homeless at the campground, and we were overrun. Without discussion, you made the outsiders leave, and then we lost our park. We lost the safety of our trails. We can't go back and open the camp to all homeless. We know the campground will fill instantly. We know outsiders are told to come here for the services. We've seen and heard this on social media, on podcasts, and through homeless advocates. We know our crime has increased exponentially. We know our safety is at risk. Let us use our knowledge of the last 6 months and protect our residents of San Clemente. Do not open the lot to non-San Clemente known residents, and move this lot immediately to the SB2 zone that is designed for the homeless. We need to protect the kids. We need to protect us residents and the wildlife. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Please do not make the same mistake again.
Thank you, Mr. Schaaf, followed by Daryl McFadden.
Good evening. My name's Doug Schaaf. I'm a resident of the city of San Clemente. I'm a member of the board of the HOA at Sea Summit. My comments this evening are in my individual capacity. I'm here tonight because I understand that a contingent of San Clemente residents is advocating an expansion of the Pico homeless encampment via a change in the rules that would require the camp to admit all those who want to reside there so that those residing at the train station can be moved. My comments will be brief. In May of this year, this council announced the establishment of Camp Pico without notice, without a hearing, without an EIR, and without even a courtesy flyer attached to the front doors of the residents of Sea Summit, 150 feet away from the camp. In my view, this is the equivalent of being jumped from behind and mugged. This will not happen again. From the outset, the residents of Sea Summit have cooperated with the city. In our discussions, we agreed that we would forego any legal action if the city committed to us that the camp was temporary and that the city would seek other alternatives for the camp away from any residences. We've been patient. We've been good neighbors. For 6 months, we have tolerated a significant deterioration in our safety. We took one for the team. In recent history, the city of San Clemente has become involved in several litigation matters that did not go well, at the great expense to the city and the citizens of San Clemente. I have had several discussions with groups of Sea Summit residents, encouraging them to hold off on formal litigation, to allow the city to keep its commitment to us with respect to the movement of Camp Pico. We do appreciate the steps that have been taken to mitigate the impact. If the city decides to materially expand the Camp Pico, the cooperation that you've seen from Sea Summit will likely disappear. A lawsuit will be filed immediately. We've been advised that there are both procedural and substantive problems with the positions taken by the city with respect to the camp. The city will spend $1 million in legal fees. The residents of Sea Summit will spend $1 million in legal fees. These statements are not meant as a threat. They're just facts.
Thank you. Next is Daryl McFadden.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem Dan Bain. Let me just start with saying I love what you guys are doing with the park, or the renovation at North Beach, doing the landscape. We're right on task. It seems like it's sort of a checker game where you move a square and they move a square and we move a square and they move a square. I've sort of just allowed myself to be there at 7-Eleven and El Camino Real first thing in the morning to catch the new ones coming off the bus. This isn't just hearsay. I mean, I'm hearing that they are being told by other cities, come here. We have a sanctuary for them. And what we do is we have FAM filling shopping carts of food up every week families that are struggling get to go once a month. I don't really understand that. Working on the train platform is wonderful. We know where they are. They've moved down to the beach. I was there last night, there was 8 tents, okay? I don't know how many there will be tonight. I was in the Marblehead encampments there. There's 4 encampments. There's 8 people that I know of there, and then today, I seen somebody showing that 3 more got dropped off. They're gonna continue to fill these canyons and the beach until they're told they can't. I know that there's constraints everywhere. I'm wondering why the Coastal Commission is so worried about a little pie shape and, you know, maybe contamination heading to the ocean, when we have them living on the beach with no restrooms. They're locked at night. So they're using the beach. The Marblehead encampments, it's just running downhill. It's just really frustrating. And, you know, I'm trying to make sure that I offer a ride out of town. And it's, I've had a lot of people take me up on it. I don't tell them, hey, this is to pay you to get out of here. I say, this is to help you get out of here. If you're not a drug addict or an alcoholic, you don't belong here, because you will become one. And I've had enough of them, and I let them think on it, and I'll come back a day or two later. My point is, there are people who want out, but we're making it so damn comfortable for them with food and handouts and people just giving money to kids that aren't spending it on food but on drugs. So when I ask them, hey, do you want out? And they say, no, this is great. It's just too simple for them, and it's heartbreaking, because why would they leave? But I'm there every morning and in the evening, and I'll walk that beach every night and count the new tents. I know we have a no camping ordinance on the beach, and I know there's special, you know, rules. Where is it too much? Thank you.
Either. Arts, any comments? So try to answer the questions to the extent I can. I'll ask for help. FAM parking lot, I haven't heard of FAM. I've talked to Mary Gray Purdue several times. I've asked them, in fact, if they could help. Do we know if they've reached out and said that we could use the parking lot?
Mary Purdue has not reached out to City Hall today.
Has anyone from
Anytime.
FAM reached out
No.
at all? Okay.
We'll reach out to them tomorrow.
can we find out
and
what's going
find
on?
out what's going on, if they've offered that. I saw an email today at 4 o'clock, and we'll follow up on that tomorrow.
Great. Can we legally move the camp? I think the answer to that is yes, but Scott, if you want
The
to
answer to that is yes, but everything we do with the camp and with camping in general faces a lawsuit from one angle or the other. If we allow, the only thing that is exempt from that risk is allowing people to camp anywhere they want, and that's been deemed to be unacceptable by this council. But that's the only risk-free option, is letting them go anywhere they want.
Sure. So is the Coastal Commission an issue? I know we've gotten a letter, and I just want to be clear that staff has been in constant contact with the Coastal Commission even as soon as, what, yesterday? Today?
Yesterday, yes.
So no fines have been levied, no fines are imminent. We're working with Coastal Commission, and things right now are on track. So I'll leave it at that.
Next item is a presentation by Eric Sund, Assistant City Manager, concerning an overview of the request for proposals for the reopening and operation of San Clemente Hospital.
So, just real quick, so as I announced earlier, I'm going to be recusing myself from this item.
So good evening, council members. Eric Sund, Assistant City Manager. I have a very brief PowerPoint presentation. This is a follow-up. If you recall, council took action in approving $10,000 to hire a consultant to help draft an RFP as it relates to finding a hospital operator. Tonight, I'm going over a basic overview outline of the RFP elements. This RFP will be coming back to the council in open session in its full RFP body once it's complete. This is just to give you kind of an introduction as to what we're looking at doing with regards to the hospital site at 654 Camino de los Muertos. So the outline of the RFP, so there'll be an introduction, a background. will be consisting of a memorial hospital utilization history, and then there'll also be a category of potential renovation and replacement costs. If you remember, in 2030, all hospitals in California will have seismic requirements that will need to be covered as well, so this RFP will cover that as well. The RFP objectives, it's a primary objective. The city seeks to reopen the prior Memorial Care Hospital in some form to provide inpatient acute care and surgical services, as well as outpatient clinical and emergency room services to not only serve the city's population, but also southern Orange County cities. Required RFP responses. This is what we'll be requiring the proposers to submit back to the city. They'll need to identify the relationship and partners and affiliates that they plan on partnering with as part of their RFP proposal. Possible synergies for reopening, such as, some might be bringing in specialty back surgery, cancer treatments, etc. Preferred legal and organizational structure. We're going to want to know the structure of the agency that submits. And then potential investable resources. We want to know that they're serious with regards to bringing financial dollars to invest in the property. And then a general statement is also required. Potential timeline. We hope to have the RFP to bring back within the next 2 weeks, so we'll have a draft format and hopefully bring it back at either the first meeting in December or the second meeting in December. We will allow for due diligence visits and question and answer periods so that prospective proposals can tour the site as well as submit question and answers to us so that they can have the best information to submit a proposal. We're hoping that we can be able to review proposals in February of 2020 and potentially bring a recommendation to the City Council in March of 2020. These are a little bit of aggressive timetables, but we also know that there's a need that's very clear by the council in terms of bringing back hospital services, so we want to be expeditious in our approach. That concludes my overview. I stand ready to answer any questions. Otherwise, I think you may have some public comments that you may want to take.
I have a question, but I'll hold it for after the comments.
Okay.
I'll do it. You have a speaker card from Brad Malamud.
I want to thank the city for all they're doing to try to get something done at this location. My question is, and I was a little unclear by the presentation, that's why I turned in the card, why the RFP wasn't available for us to review tonight, because it sounds like they're going to put it out for bid within 2 weeks, which would be before another council meeting. And I believe the law requires us to be able to review that before it's set out as a public document. And I don't think the city can issue it without us reviewing it first. So I would just like a clarification from the city attorney whether that can be issued before the public gets a chance to review it before it gets approved by council, or if they're going to try to push it through a closed session, which would be absolutely illegal. It's not a negotiation, it's not a real estate document, it's a request for a proposal. As far as I can tell, there's no ability to block the citizens from seeing it before it's sent out. So all I'm asking for is a legal clarification or a procedural clarification. And I thank Eric for his presentation.
I can answer that. So we have every intention of not releasing the RFP until we bring it back to the council, as I indicated, either at the first meeting in December or the second meeting. What we may be doing, if we can get it done in time, is posting it on our website in lieu of the council meeting so that the public has plenty of time to review it before the council deliberates on it. All we have right now is just kind of the skeleton of the outline of the RFP developed. We're working with the consultant to put the meat into the RFP template and bring that back. So if we can get it up on the website prior to bringing it to the council, we will do so. But again, we will be bringing it back to the council for review, input, public comment, and approval to release. And we'll have a more definitive timeline when we do bring that back to the council as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sun. That was really my question that I had to be clarified, that we see it before it goes out, so it's transparent, the public sees it, and it's, we check it for accuracy, and everybody's comfortable with what it says. Do we know when the consultant who was hired to recruit a hospital emergency room to San Clemente, when they'll get inside the hospital?
That part we don't know yet, so we're working through BBK and the attorneys with Memorial Care to look at access for that. And we will hope, and I'm pretty confident we will have access to that as part of this process.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Ann?
Dan.
Okay. Thank you. Members of the audience who wish to address council on matters that are within the jurisdiction of the City of San Clemente, but not separately listed on the agenda, may do so during the oral communications portion of the meeting. Speakers may address council once during either oral communications part 1 or part 2. A total time limitation of 30 minutes is allocated for oral communications part 1, with each speaker being allotted 3 minutes in which to give his or her presentation.
All right, first up is Mr. Malamud, followed by Rick Loeffler, and then Bonnie Barnes.
Since 2015, Best and Krieger has billed the city exactly $8,624,205.30. The city manager assures us he's reviewed every legal bill for accuracy. However, the proper level of review is reasonableness, necessity, duplication, conferencing expenses within the firm's expertise, training, etc. He simply doesn't have the skills to review the bills. And the proof is that he has no experience is that my CPRA requested his that, and there is none returned. Attorney Scott Smith says that he reviews his law firm's bills. Apparently, a city attorney and his billing partner, he too has found no reductions. So we've had $8,624,205.30 with no reductions at all. I think anybody who's ever been a billing partner, I have, I know Dan has, I've never sent out bills without reductions, even if they were efficiently done. I don't expect less when the city's money is involved. The problem is we have the fox watching the hen house. We're guided by our review by our city attorney, who, as a statutory rule, is required to review all legal bills submitted to the city. That's one of his functions. Yet he's reviewing his own law firm's billing, and that makes no sense to anybody I've ever talked to that's a lawyer. Today, I asked the city manager to place that item, a review of the city. I'm asking the city attorney to be removed from his position. He can keep most of the $8 million legal work, if you will, going forward. But he just can't act as both the city attorney and $2 million a year of legal work. I've asked that to be agendized for review. The city attorney did a response to Ms. Ferguson when she asked to start the process that she had to get 3 votes of council to get it on the agenda, yet he alone has the right to put anything on the agenda. So he's chosen to be in my sense, political on this issue, rather than allowing us to air this issue that is a real concern. We're broke, guys. I hope you all know we're broke. So spending $2 million of legal work is a lot of sheriff deputies. So what I'm asking is that the city manager tonight agrees to agendize this item for the next meeting. And if he refuses to do so, which is his prerogative, we all know where he stands. And if he refuses to do that, then I ask 3 council members to agendize a review of whether we should separate the job of city attorney, possibly bring in an in-house attorney, but that can be a decision laid down the line, and bring in a separate attorney to watch our legal billing and watch what's going on and to oversee legal work. Our budget demands this. I finally would say that when Susan tonight spoke about the council agendizing an item, any council member has the right pursuant to our procedures, 1201-11, to immediately when she was done speaking, request this item be agendized, and 3 votes of council would get it agendized. You don't have to wait till later in the meeting. It can be done anytime, and you have the right to respond to a request by the public. So I think you should take that seriously. We deserve to have hearings on things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malamud. Next is Rick Loeffler, followed by Von Barnes, and then Pete Van Nuys.
Hey, Council, I just want to give you a heads up. There's a petition that I've been putting out. Well, actually, a ton of residents here have been putting out on my behalf to ban smoking in the city of San Clemente. I know it's not on the agenda tonight, but I think it might end up on the agenda in a couple of weeks or somewhere down the line. I just want to give you the heads up that I basically structured it the exact same way that Laguna Beach is, that they passed regarding the wording. I know if you were to take it up that you would probably change the wording with input from the city attorney or whatever, which is fine. Just wanted to have something to start with. And I don't know how many signatures we'll end up in a couple of weeks. I know it's going to be a goodly amount. Here's again when I'm saying listen to your constituents. And somebody brought up, this is some kind of discriminatory thing to the homeless. This isn't really a homeless issue. I mean, if they're smoking and it's illegal, it's the same as if I'm smoking and it's illegal, but it's a health and safety issue, and that was my motivation. So anyway, hopefully I'll get you that, and you can take a look at that. Another thing I want to talk about is something that was kind of brought up online, and I'm not sure how I found it, but we were talking about pressure washing and cleaning, the platforms or anything in the city, the downtown Del Mar, and then we're going to spend, it seems like a lot of money on pressure washing. Well, I looked and man, you can get an industrial pressure washer, hot water pressure washer with a Honda automatic start for like $4,500, which I think is less than we're talking about paying somebody to do it. So maybe the city could think about purchasing one of these, and I'm sure maintenance guys that I'd love to go down there and pressure wash stuff. That'd be a blast, maybe, but I'm sure maintenance guys would love to do that, and then we could use it for anything. It wouldn't have to be, we have a section we have to clean and contract somebody. We could just go clean the heck out of the city. So maybe that's something you guys could think about. And the last thing, and this is kind of like on a personal note, and I know this was discussed in closed session, and I don't want to talk about the legality of it, but there was a situation on my street on La Ventana, and this is what I was speaking of about Kathy, we were involved in, and I just, the residents of my street would really like an update. I know the house is in receivership, but nothing has happened on it at all, and we're just concerned, about, the liability or the possibility. There's been a lot of transients trying to kind of get into it and whatever, and it just, if maybe somebody could email me and let me know an update on what's happening. I did talk to the receiver a while back, and he wasn't sure what was going on as far as building or unbuilding, but again, we don't have to know the legality of it or the specifics, but just maybe an update of, what's happening with the vacant house at the end of our street. And I would welcome a message from any of you guys on that. So thanks a lot.
Can we invite somebody to comment on that later on? I think Mr. Silver is here, and we'll after oral communications, there's our...
All right, I'm Vonnie Barnes, RSCCA Board President. This is the first item is on the ordinance for small cell antennas. Please include a provision that all applicants and appellants must remove abandoned, obsolete structures before installation of new cell antennas. Slide 1, if, for example, this cell tower abandoned 20 years ago is an attractive nuisance located in CAL FIRE's very severe high fire zone, vandals and transients are known to climb on the platforms to engage in smoking, drugs, and alcohol. Access to the tower from the city's Ridge Route Trail that lacks enforcement raises the city's risk of liability, damages, and litigation. The tower is rusty, falling apart, and should be removed as a matter of public safety. Slide 2 shows the ocean view and why it's an attractive nuisance from the tower, as well as the negative view impacts it imposes on the hundreds of residents who have to look at it every day. Slide 3 is a close-up of the top platform where offenders party and throw down cigarette butts, bottles, and needles into the dry brush in the fire zone. And this is a high voltage tension wires that are hooked up to the cell tower that should be disconnected to prevent sparking brush fires. And slide 5 shows the towers viewed from the park and homes below. Again, the ordinance needs to require all applicants, including appellants, to remove obsolete transmission units such as this cell tower as a condition of approval. The next item I have is police service on Nob Hill in our fire zones in Rancho San Clemente. On Friday, October 15, I called police to arrest a trespasser who was using a gas-powered weed eater to clear motorcycle runs in the very severe fire hazard zone. The red star, wait a minute. Oh, it's not on there, Laura. Maybe you can bring up the next things that I'd asked. Without it, well, she brings it up. The fire required 50 firefighters and 2 helicopters and cost a lot. Here it is. The star is where the incident happened along Del Cerro. The police didn't come for 2.5 hours, and by that time, there's the offender right there with the weed eater. And there's a motorcycle trail that is hidden in all the dry brush. This is missing the picture I had of the gas weed eater, which I had a slide for. It's not here, I'm sorry. Anyways, the OCSD dispatch needs to know this is a high priority when we call. There were 6 or 7 responses before they got to us, and we've never been able to catch these repeat offenders. So we don't want another Nob Hill fire, and we need to reduce the risk of fires by catching them and the liabilities to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Next is Pete Van.
Mr. Mayor, I'm Vera Pro Tem. May I interject something quickly? And City Attorney, when I worked at the city, I used to oversee the telecom leases. And when we had property that was left behind by leases that were terminated, we actually would publish that in the paper as abandoned property. And then after a certain amount of time, we would have an auction for the surplus property. Could you see if that's still law? Because that's something we could do. It is.
Sorry, Councilmember Ferguson and Council, we'll look at that, especially if it's on leased land, because whatever preemptive authority the FCC has over telecommunications, it would not trump our ability to execute those remedies under those leases. So yeah, that wouldn't take any trouble at all to figure that out and report.
Great. Mr. Van Nuys.
Good evening. Pete Van Nuys, proprietor of the bicycle rental business down in the Metrolink building. I'm asking tonight for relief of a fine levied by code compliance, a fine which I believed had been waived in August. I've been out of the country on and off since late August and learned only recently that code compliance has decided, apparently as a punitive act, to demand this money despite the fact that, 1, we were never in violation of any applicable city codes, and 2, we nevertheless complied at no small cost of money and time with the wishes expressed by the city. I doubt the city received any credible complaints regarding where we parked our bicycles. I know there were no issues until the city installed the 4 blue planters where the crosswalk intersects the multi-use path. I know many people mistakenly assumed we installed those planters. I know that the planters combined with our bicycles frustrated a lot of riders of high-speed electric bikes, riders of gasoline-powered bikes. Interesting. My phone just freaked out. But anyway, those people were never the intended users of the multi-use path. That path was created from the very beginning as an extension of the beach trail. The planters were intended to slow down bicyclists before diving off into the crosswalk. By themselves, the planters have failed to do that. In this context, citing us for impeding the public right-of-way is absurd. If anything, the city should be trying to impede it more effectively. I know this is not the time or place for a hearing, but fairness calls for a review of the behavior, misunderstanding, and denial of due process, which is apparently code compliance's modus operandi. When I asked for a review from Adam Atamian, he condescendingly replied that such would be available only with advance payment of $750, forfeit if the applicant lost the appeal. Charging $750 for an appeal of a $200 fine is absurd on its face. Deliberate denial of due process intended to permit unfair and capricious action by department staff. To repeat, our bikes have been moved off city pavements since August. Nobody's life is better for that fact, nor has the path become any safer. On the contrary, dangerous and illegal use of the path and crosswalk has increased. The intersection of El Camino and Estacion is complex, motorists and bicyclist conflicts continue, and city priorities are twisted, to say the least. In the interest of fairness to a partner the city has relied on for over 10 years to facilitate safe and enjoyable bicycle use, I ask for relief from this fine. Thank you.
Mr. Van Nuys. Next is Jim Bieber, followed by Susan Smith, and then Ken Nielsen.
Do we want to have James reach out to?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that Adam or James figure out what that was about.
Good evening. I was minding my own business about a month ago, and somebody brought to my attention that my name appeared on the city register, that our city attorney and his law firm billed the taxpayers $1,400 for my name. And there's a profile of our fabulous city attorney, the very, very soft-spoken and unassuming Scott Smith, who specializes, we see here, on First Amendment issues and helping governments navigate through election laws, which is very ironic. Next slide. When he was asked about why my name appeared, he gave this response: the invoices on last week's warrants dealt with the defendant of a lawsuit brought against the city by Jim Bieber relating to a PRA demand on the district election measure. The lawsuit sought records on personal computers of council members. Such records at the time were not subject to disclosure, so the council opted to withhold them. During the pendency of the case, the Supreme Court reversed the appellate decision on the case. Based on that decision, the council decided to release the records. In essence, for several years now, Mr. Bieber, the plaintiff in the case, has asserted that the city over-defended it. Every single sentence in that reply is a lie. It's not misstated, it's a complete lie. What happened was, these two guys over here, Ward and Ham, during an election that was close, voted to illegally fund a recount of the ballots. You sat there and let them do it as the city attorney. Next slide, please. I put in a request to see public records, not private ones, public records of emails. And you said you weren't going to turn them over. I had to file a lawsuit, and there's hundreds of records that you refused to release. So we went ahead and sued. Next slide. And in what was shown were just treasure trove of illegal activity. Here's the city manager saying, we're going to fund a recount. Then the next letter he sent off, next slide, said that, oh, it's not my position, or it's my position as a private citizen. Here's his direction to council saying that we're going to do it. Next slide. Here's the city clerk negotiating payment. So what happened with Mr. Smith, next slide please, is that he said, okay, we'll settle this case, but we're going to put a confidentiality agreement in this. And that if I were to ever describe what happened, that I had to sue the city for these public records, I would have to pay a fine of $1,000. So that's outrageous. Next slide. This is what was the result of carrying this through to litigation. The judge looked at your nefarious actions against me as a member of the public, withholding records, and the judge said, it appears the city did not produce records to petitioners that were within scope of what he sought until after the lawsuit was filed. From the evidence before the court, it appears that the city had not undertaken to look and come up with a request. You withheld public records, and then you have the audacity to tell people, or to tell your bosses here, that it was on a Public Records Act request on something that didn't exist. Mr. Smith, can you please clarify if what you said in that memo to the council members, if there was any truth to that?
Mr. Beaver, thank you. Next is Susan Smith.
Mayor Pro Tem Bain, may I ask our attorney if he could answer that? Because I was the one who just was asking, basically going through the warrant register, why some of our bills were just being paid that were from 2017 and 2018. So that's how this came about again. And I still don't understand why it's taken so long to pay those bills. But was in fact this lawsuit, did it have to be filed so that he could get records because we wouldn't give them to him, to Mr. Bieber?
Yeah, if I could, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, yeah, there was, let me start here. This ballot measure in question, from beginning to end, including arguments and counter-arguments and work that we had to do for the city clerk and as registrar and election official in it. Our total lawsuits in that were $16,000. The post-mortem that Mr. Bieber continues to perpetuate has cost more than six figures. And the reason those documents weren't released, if I could say, there were two reasons. One is that they were personal emails out of personal council member accounts. The time they were written were not subject to disclosure under a case decided in favor of the city of San Jose. As I said in my note, while the case was pending, the Supreme Court reversed that decision, making those personal emails subject to disclosure. We could have fought that more, but the city council on our advice suggested that we settle and compromise the case. I won't discuss the course of settlement discussions because I'm not ethically able to do that. But that was why. The second reason that records were withheld were because they involved communications to and from the city and its lawyers. And the law protects the rights of public and private clients to counsel in confidence with lawyers. Were that protection not in place, clients would be reticent to seek advice from their lawyers, and the interests of those clients would be compromised as their legal strategies are revealed to the outside world. And so those were the two key issues at stake here. I haven't revealed these bills. I don't know why they were paid so slow. I don't want to add to the costs that have already so many times exceeded the original costs that Mr. Beaver objects to.
Yeah, but I just want to point out, I know I worked here at the time and we were watching that San Jose case, and I know this lawsuit was filed, I think literally the day after. So Mr. Bieber was entitled to those documents, and he didn't get them, because I believe he got them from the Registrar of Voters at the time, and yet we withheld them. So we created the lawsuit, is what I'm saying. I mean, people don't sue a city if they're, getting all the documents they need. So hopefully we learned a lesson from that to be transparent and not withhold documents going forward.
We're able to do that, but I thank you for that information and that perspective, Ms. Ferguson. I do need to say that this council and the council before it and the council before that has not wanted to share attorney-client communications with Mr. Beaver or any other member of the public. And it's my job to defend that decision. It's not my decision to make. I present the issues to the council, and they decide whether they want to keep and violate that attorney-client privilege or not. And so I will own the task of defending it and the costs that go along with that, but it's not my decision to make. It's up to you and your colleagues.
Are we still
Thank you.
following the practice of charging someone $1,000 if they talk about a case that the city lost?
No, a gag order is involved in many, many settlements. The global settlement that TCA and its members entered into had a similar provision in it. So in this case, that term wasn't agreed to, but it's not uncommon at all.
Yeah, I just don't think that serves our citizens or our city well, so thank you.
I'm going to get back to public comments because we have 30 minutes. So can we get Ms. Smith, Susan Smith, and then Ken Nielsen?
James, I'd like to encourage you and all city council members to check your emails. On Thursday, November 7th at 8:26 a.m., Vonnie Barnes sent you an email for transient campsite suggestion for 10:30 negotiation. Just a disclaimer, and also on a couple of disclaimers, I am not related to Scott Smith. Just wanted to throw that out there. I also wanted everyone to know that I am a real estate broker by trade. I am a licensed real estate broker. So, I know there are other properties available in the SB2 zone where the lot is supposed to be located by law. So I am going to refer to Brad Malamute's mention of City Code 1201-11. And I would like to again request that the City Council agendize closing the Pico camp and relocating it to the appropriate SB2 zone where it is required to be by law. Earlier, so I would like to hear an answer on that when I'm finished speaking, please. We also talked about a summary of costs related to the camp. And I would just like to point out that what's been published is not accurate. It's not including a lot of costs, but I do appreciate hearing the costs of the legal fees of $390,000, the one-time initial camp setup of $76,000, monthly operating costs of around $31,000. I'd like to include that no trash, park rangers, biologist times, administrative fees from the city manager, assistant manager, or any staff time, any cost of repairs for Pico Park, which really is more than, come on, let's just admit it. It's a cover-up for your failed, unpermitted, illegal camp. Come on, the jig's up. We all know what the deal is. So, let's see, it's okay that you guys, to admit that you guys made a mistake. It's never too late to correct your wrongs. In fact, it's okay to stop the bleeding before it gets any worse. Because, you know, if you add up all the assets, just the cost that we talked about without the extra costs that we haven't added in yet, real monetary costs, we're at $616,000 for an illegal unpermitted camp. $500,000 asset for Pico Park takes it up to $1.16 million. I mean, we have to just take the asset out of there. You've taken it off the board. So subtract that out. Subtract out $2.6 million for the asset of Marblehead Coastal Preserve. I mean, what are we up to? How many millions of dollars? How many millions of dollars more are going to be forthcoming in legal fees because our rights have been violated because you did not give us the proper notice as required by law? Not to mention violating city and state ordinances, state and federal wildlife protection programs. I could go on
Thank you,
and
Ms.
on.
Smith. Next is Kim
Agendize,
Nielsen.
please.
Mr. Nielsen, does anybody want to make a motion to agendize?
I'd like to make a motion to agendize at the next regularly scheduled council meeting to discuss the campsite again
Okay. Well,
and what we might do differently.
so where would we move it to? Do you have a suggestion in that regard?
I don't, but perhaps we bring those back to the public on December 3rd.
I'm inclined to stay with the timeline that we discussed in closed session and agendize it towards the end of December. Is that acceptable to the rest of the council to stay on that timeline? Okay. Mr. Nielsen?
Good evening. I wanted to thank the city for pushing sand up on the beach. Finally, how many years I've been begging you to do that. And this is the nicest job they've ever done. The only negative to it is there's a ton more sand out there. I'd like to see you make a pile 5 times bigger than the one you have. Because when the good Lord comes and takes some of our beach away and winter's gone, we can push it down and we'll have a lot more beach left. And go look at Moonlight Beach if you want to see how to do it. Some of you have seen Moonlight Beach. They have a pile so high it looks like Mount Everest. And they're doing it just so that they can push it back after the storm season, and it makes it really nice. Also, as far as pressure washing and cleaning up the train station, we have a Vector truck that we could pick up the waste with, because picking up the waste would be a big deal. We can get our own steam cleaner, we could buy one, we could rent one, and have our staff do it, and it's a great idea, and we'd save a lot of money. If that $7,000 that I saw is true, that's a lot of money. We don't need to do that. Plus, then we'd have the machinery to go down and do Del Mar, so they could get that cleaned up too. And any other mess they make, we can clean up. Thank you.
Kenny, real quick before you take off.
Okay.
If we get the permit, could we do that? We get the permit for the washing and the cleanup?
I'll talk to Tom Vonnegut tomorrow
There's a way to
about
do
the
that?
process.
Ken, you're offering, right?
I'll do it.
Okay.
No problem.
If we get the permit.
I'm
we can
OSHA
make sure-
40-hour certified. I can teach people to do it. I can show you how to do it. It's not that big a deal.
Well, you're the man if you do
So
that.
it's not that tough, so,
right.
and save a way lot of money.
And James, aren't you, I think you were looking into purchasing something in the future, right,
Yes.
for routine cleanings?
Staff is looking into
Oh,
that
that's
too.
excellent, thank you.
Mr. Rubolino.
Yeah.
Good evening, Council. If we take the Wayback Machine, we'll go back to December 2017 when the employee satisfaction survey was turned in. Some of the comments from there were that James and Eric were attacking employees with any years of service. Many very good long-term employees have left the city because of Eric, and many other employees have been subject to his harassment and retribution for speaking up or ending up on his hit list. Another comment, now it seems that many of our long-term dedicated workers are being unfairly mistreated and targeted. Council, or get rid of the bully ACM. He is rude, makes brash decisions without staff input, rattles his chain of just do your job and you'll be okay. Replace Erickson so employees are treated with dignity and respect and don't have a work environment full of fear and resentment. Promotions need to be given to people who know and do the work needed, not who is friendly to management or who puts up with the inappropriate languages or actions. Some people are given positions within the city, while other people are looked over or run through numerous obstacles to advance. So these are some of the comments that came up in December 2017, and then lo and behold, now we've got a lawsuit filed against the city by a former employee. Some of the things that were mentioned in that lawsuit: City Manager James Maxinoff and Assistant City Manager Eric Sun engaged in an illegal, systematic, and pervasive campaign to drive out the city's older workers. The city has established a pattern of discriminating against and retaliating against older workers. As many as 60 city workers, most of whom were older than plaintiff, have been driven out of the city because of their discriminatory conduct. Plaintiff was not considered in the course of the city's appointment and selection of the provisional recreation manager, for which she was overqualified for. The plaintiff formally reported the age discrimination in an email to the city's HR manager, Heather Lowe. The city retaliated against and continued to discriminate against the plaintiff after she reported the illegal age discrimination. Because of the ongoing discrimination and retaliation, the plaintiff had no other choice but to resign her employment immediately in October 2018. In her written letter to the city, she stated, "I must resign from the job I once loved due to the ongoing discrimination, harassment, and retaliation I have endured by management over the past 2 to 3 years." This is a San Clemente resident, and this is what our employees are experiencing, or were, the third to half the staff that have left in the process. The plaintiff was retaliated against in recruitment and hiring of the aquatic supervisor position, which opened in March 2018. So, council, now we've got a lawsuit that stemmed from the employee survey that the lawsuits were presumed that they would be coming about. And just to let you know that I've gone ahead and sent this public document out to media context so that they all have that. Mr. Raimundo also has it now so that they can report on it as necessary. But I think that we've got a definite clearinghouse that needs to happen at management level. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the public comments.
Okay.
We're outside the 30 minutes.
Could we have a motion waiving reading in full of all resolutions and
So
ordinances?
A motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Closed session report, city attorney.
There's no reportable action to take. There were a couple items scheduled that we did not get to, and they'll just be handled next time. The first is under A, existing litigation, San Clemente versus Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency. We didn't have time to get to that. The item B, real property negotiators, there was no time to cover that, and so that was not handled. And then item C, initiation of litigation, was not handled either. That's it.
Okay.
All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion unless council staff or the public request removal of an item for separate discussion and action. The public has requested the removal of items C, M, P, N, and I'd just like to read in one correction to item O. That's the contract award for the purchase of electricity. The staff recommendation indicates that the proposed contract with Calpine Energy Solutions provides for the purchase of electricity for an amount not to exceed $37.88 per kilowatt hour. It should be per megawatt hour.
So just to clear, that's C, N is in Nancy.
And M.
M.
Yes, M and N.
I have I, and I'd also like to speak on N, like Nancy.
Any others? Okay, I'll make a motion to move the remainder.
Second.
So a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Remainder pass.
There was a tie, I think, with the second. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the first item is C, it's the warrant register.
And then followed by Mr. Bieber.
Going to be very quick. Part of the warrant register is 3 items for $119,000, give or take, and the only description for the Best Krieger bills is BBK. That's self-evident, it's under Best.
Sorry, Brad, can I just interrupt for a sec? Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm the vendor on this, so if it's okay with the council, I'd like to recuse myself, participate from the audience if necessary.
Please. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
On my behalf, you don't need to. I have no problem. I just want a description of what it is. I'm not questioning the amount or anything else other than $119,000 is a lot of our money, and I believe I wrote everybody and asked what it was, and nobody responded. So it's not, I don't have beef with Scott, I just want to know, because he didn't put the description down, that's done by staff. I don't understand it, and I've reviewed over 1,300 bills by his firm, I've never seen that description before. Because that's not a description, that's the firm. So maybe somebody could just describe it to us, or take it up next time, but we were promised that we would get full descriptions within the description category by James a year ago. This is the first major oversight I found. I just want to correct it, and I just wonder who's reading these warrant registers to get by with a non-description, so thank you.
So thank you, Brad. I'll answer your question. I did respond, and generally when you respond and send me emails with other council members, I don't respond because I don't want to violate the Brown Act. But I did ask the question, and it's BBK retainer. The retainer portion was cut off, and I got that clarification from staff today. So it's BBK retainer payments for the retainer amounts under their contract.
Fair enough, thank you.
Mr. Bieber?
Yeah, I had a presentation because I was going to go over one of the billings that had my name on that. But if you could go back to my previous slideshow. And actually, could you wait till that comes up to start my clock? There we go, thank you. So, Scott, you've taken leave from your chair. Earlier, when I had mentioned and described the lawsuit that you instigated by refusing to release public documents, you specifically stated, excuse me, could advance that you withheld these documents because they were attorney-client privileged. Now, if everybody peers in, this is a list of, I think the record goes up to 300 records. It skips a little bit, but that's hundreds and hundreds of records on city email accounts that you withheld. When I made this request, specifically you said that you were not going to release these because they were attorney-client privileged and that they would hamper future deliberations on the matter of the city paying for a recount, which was illegal. So let's go ahead and look again. See this letter from the city manager to the county registrar calling for the city to pay for a recount? Is that attorney-client privileged, like you said literally 10 minutes ago? Or were you lying? No, you were lying. Let's take a look at another record you said that was attorney-client privileged. Here's one from our crack city manager to the city council saying that it's within its cost and spending limit to go ahead and fund a recount, which is in fact illegal. Is that attorney-client privileged? Liar. No, it's not. Let's look at more. Here's one from Joanne Bade to the Registrar of Voters, negotiating payment that's illegal for the city to be making. Is that attorney-client privileged, like you just said 10 minutes ago? Liar. You know, when I describe you to people, I say, well, we have a city attorney. He's kind of like a mob attorney. But that is too much of a compliment to mob attorneys. You're on the grift. This lawsuit cost the taxpayers $130,000 because you lied to me and said that you didn't have to turn over these public records. And then you just lied 10 minutes ago to the public, your employers, and said that you refused to turn over these records because they were attorney-client privileged. Are they? Do you want me to go backwards on the slideshow so you can lie again and say they are? At what point do you address the public and just say, hey, you know what, I'm on the grift. I've been bilking the taxpayers. I've had for the past a majority of council members like Warden Ham who I can manipulate and they'll bob their heads and say, hey, you want to file a lawsuit? Sure. Or they'll get all wound up in their ego and they'll want to sue somebody and you lose, but it doesn't matter because you bill, and you've made your law firm millions and millions of dollars by lying. You sat there while the city mayor read notes that you gave him that threw out members of the council that violated their civil rights that cost the city $70,000. At what point do you hold any responsibility for the taxpayers of bilking them and you pay for the errors and the mistakes, not mistakes, the illegal
Mr.
actions you've
Bieber.
taken. So why don't you take a look at these? I'll leave these for
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Bieber.
And you can go ahead and tell me which ones are client privilege.
Mr. Bieber.
Liar.
Thank you. Have any other speaker cards?
That's all. So it is.
Yeah, any other comments or questions on the warrant register? Okay, I'll move the item. Motion and second by Councilmember Ferguson. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
You said that was seconded by Councilmember Ferguson? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, real quick, I just pulled CFD for Marblehead Coastal. I didn't support it when we initiated it back in whatever year it was, and I'm not going to support this amendment to it, or this update to it. So, with that, we have a
comment from the public. Susan Smith? Ms. Smith, go ahead.
The Marblehead Coastal Local Agency Special Tax and Bond Accountability Act report. I was going through it, and the total is what, $59,850,474.50, and reserves, expense funds, insurance funds, bond funds, and improvement funds. Since you guys are city council, I'm sure you are familiar with where a lot of the bonds for Marblehead Coastal have been coming from since 2016. The Sea Summit community has provided quite a substantial amount in bonds related to this, and I'm here to object to the city's placement of a homeless, unpermitted shelter in this zone because it is a blatant misuse and mismanagement of funds that are meant to improve the city. And by the city taking the actions of placing the illegal, unpermitted homeless camp there, it is actually degrading the area. I'd like to see if there's any kind of detailed report on the bonds and whether or not there's going to be some kind of balance sheet on what the difference was between this year and last year and the impacts and financial damage, and how much of these reserves and expenses will need to be spent not on your normal maintenance of, say, the water basins or anything of the like that's meant to preserve the area, but rather on maintenance due to the homeless issues that are invading the preserve. So there's a lot of different things that could be done there so that we could have more transparency for the people and for the Sea Summit homeowners who are kindly paying these bonds that you are so viciously taking advantage of and deteriorating. I'm not really sure what the procedure is for getting more transparency on that, or for getting some kind of report to be provided for the difference, or if some of these costs are even being captured, since there's a hot potato of who actually is stewarding the preserve. I mean, the asset belongs to the city, you're managing the bonds, we're paying a boatload of taxes, and again, that money's not for free. Somebody's gonna want some accountability and some responses. I mean, I guess we could add that to a possible lawsuit. I don't know, I'm not an attorney. I'm a real estate broker. So, by the way, I do know there are other lots available, so I'd like you to reconsider agendizing it, because the animals start breeding in January.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any other cards? So I'll move the item.
Second.
Motion by me, second by Councilmember Ward. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, passes 3-1. M?
M is contract award for water reclamation plant, electrical systems replacement, Phase 1.
Todd Saunders?
Good evening, Council. Thanks for having me. My name's Todd Saunders. I'm with Pacific Industrial Electric. In regards to the mentioned project, I was at both bid openings, the sealed bids. The first one was canceled, and then it came back out, I believe, on October 10th for reopening. They changed the licensing requirements, and then there was a few tweaks to the drawings, but that was about it. So when I went to the second opening, we at Pacific Industrial Electric were listed as third. The other low bid and second bid, I stayed for the whole thing. They were missing documents. Global Power was the low listed bid, and they were missing their bid bond. And they rechecked it. They checked it 3 different times. The second place was missing the addendum document. Me and one of the representatives from RIC, which was the second place bidder, stuck around and checked it again for the third time. Again, you have a person that's opening the documents, then you have a witness that verifies that. Again, went through 4 different reviews. The rest of the bidders had left. I sat around and I believe it, excuse me, I believe the gentleman that was opening was Greg Dice, construction manager, DBI. I don't know that for sure. I then approached him and asked him that it was my understanding that these 2 low bidders would be DQ'd, disqualified. And at that point, he looked at me and said, most likely that's the case. We'll have to review with our counsel, our legal counsel. So we filed protests the next day. I finally got a response back from Greg that stated that Global Power did incorporate their bid bond to their proposal. So I'm not sure how that happened. So there was no statement on the protest in regards to RIC. So I'm not sure on their status. But I will tell you that the specifications were very clear. Another thing that we noticed that the specifications for the project stated that they were sole sourcing Square D for the switchgear. In looking after the fact, Global Power never even reached out to Square D. They had budgeted it. What might be one of the reasons that they were extremely low. So we did spend the time to put that together, and if there's any questions, I'd be...
Thank you. So I just, no questions. I just wanted to note that I was passing your card around so other council members and city attorneys are aware of your bid protest. I think you made that clear in your comments. So is Mr. Riebensdorf here? Can we have Dave come up?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Dave Riebensdorf, Utilities Director.
Thank you. So I just wanted to, our speaker, Mr. Saunders, had raised some issues with the bid process. He's making a bid protest in terms of like irregularities with different documents, things like that. Can you address any of that?
Yeah, my understanding is the bid bond was provided as part of the bid. They did not provide the addendum, but they did acknowledge it on the website and then also in their bid. That information was shared with the city attorney, and they made the recommendation that the city council could waive that bid irregularity. The difference in price between the first and the third is several $100,000. I have that in front of me here, but the low bidder was $1,405,000, and the third bidder was $1,794,000. We also contacted the contractor in regards to Square D, and they said they did talk to him and that they will be providing the equipment that was provided within or required as part of the specifications.
Is there any time imminent issue with this project? Does this need to happen right away, or is it possible to sort of address? You said we need to waive the irregularity, which is the first I'm hearing of it. So if we didn't do that, is there any issues with delaying this project?
We could delay it, but I wouldn't want to delay it too long because it's equipment that we do need to replace soon.
Okay. So I guess what I'm sort of leaning towards, and I need some guidance here because this is new to me, but if we gave it another 2 weeks to try to address this irregularity, would that be something that we could do?
Yeah, I'm certain you can. There's no deadline on the drop dead for awarding the contract, is there, Dave, that precedes that meeting?
Typically, there's a time frame. Bids are good for, I think it's up to 120 days.
Yeah, I think that's
We
right,
could
yeah.
get the contractor, low bidder, to extend that.
I just feel better
Potentially.
if we just went through that step and we had somebody come take the time to address this. First time hearing of it, so if we could do that, I think we put all of it to rest by making sure the process is fair, right? So we don't have to waive any deficiencies.
I think either way, if we award it to the low bidder, the city council will still be requested to waive the bid irregularity.
Okay, so that's not gonna,
I
there's
don't-
no
that won't
way
change the
to fix
outcome.
that by just going through and giving more time. There'd have to be a whole rebid.
Correct.
Okay.
Or you would award the contract to the third low bidder.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Please.
So, one thing I'm worried about is rain. You know, this is our treatment plan and things that we need to replace. Is there any issue with the winter if we get some big storm or something that we're not going to be able to do this work, or it's going to impair us in our treatment?
The majority of this work will take place probably in the spring. It takes some time to order to procure the equipment.
Okay. So we've been through this before, if you're wondering. But we do normally acquiesce to our staff. They usually do a very excellent job in doing this. And if it's not going to change anything, I don't want to lose the low bid that we have. It was clarified that this was on their website and in their bid, this amount. And they talked to Square D. So the addendum copy, maybe it wasn't in there, but it was in the bid and it was on their website for the bid. So we've decided to go with that, and it's been initialed here. It is quite a bit different. And if it's not going to cure anything, I think we should just go ahead. That's my 2 cents.
The city attorney has also sent all the documentation and reviewed it as well.
Mr. Rebenstorf, how often do we waive the bid errors? How often do we, is that a regular practice? Because I know there's a deadline for the bids to be submitted, and, you know, the other companies did get them in on time, complete. So is this I'm just curious, because we haven't had something like that happen in my first year on council. So how common is that?
I think it occurs probably close to once a year, to every other year. It happens occasionally. I'm trying to recall the last project. I don't know if it was marine safety that had that issue, but I don't recall exactly which project was the last one.
And would we have waived the immaterial bid error if it was more, if the bid came in higher, for instance? Would the rules still apply?
The rules would still apply either way, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We rejected all the bids back in September. Was this particular outfit a part of that bidding process, or?
There were some issues with that, where there were some anomalies and some errors in the bid documents that weren't brought to our attention until after the project was bid, so we wanted to clean that up and go out and rebid the project. That was the recommendation at that time.
All right, is there a motion? Discussion, questions?
I'll move that we adopt staff recommendation. I haven't found it. What number is this? Okay.
So motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? I'm sorry. Passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders, for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Next is item N, that's the transfer to Capistrano Shores of the 4 by 325-foot portion of Senda de la Playa to the Capistrano Shores Mobile Home Park.
Okay, cards. All right, Mr. Anderson, followed by Ms. Lofton.
Probably not necessary, but possibly.
Okay. Attorney on standby.
Yes. Council, Mayor Pro Tem Bain, want to just take a quick moment. I wanted to be sure we got those documents on record regarding some misstatements that occurred at the last Planning Commission hearing. There was some misinformation that went back and forth, and also some misstatements of law, as well as a misrepresentation of the spirit of the settlement. So I did want to get that on the record, and then I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank you on behalf of myself and the legal staff, as well as Capistrano Shores community as a whole. Dan, Laura, thank you so much for reading all those emails, spending the time, getting involved. It made a huge difference, and we look forward to putting this behind us and moving on as good neighbors and getting back to bettering the community instead of spending money. So thank you.
Great. Ms. Lofton, did you want to add anything?
I have nothing to add unless you have questions when you...
Is there any questions of Mr. Anderson, Ms. Lofton? I don't have any questions. I'll just echo the sentiment that we're very happy to move forward as well, and thank you for your work. I know that council members Ham and Ward have worked with this a long time. I know they're very thrilled to see this getting to an end, as are myself and Councilwoman Ferguson. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go
You have some comments?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just going to make a motion.
Oh, yeah, let me comment real quick. So, I'm excited to put this behind us. I think the city's been working on this since before I got on council. My only concern, I broached this with you earlier, Dan, if there's something we can do, and Scott, that we can put in here to ensure that this is the finish line that we're looking for, and if we do end up hitting any road bumps or reestablishing a finish line in the future, that this easement reverts back to the city.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Mayor and Council. And as Councilmember Ham pointed out, this is the grand finale to a lot of disputes about this property and about jurisdiction over it. And we have written the settlement agreement so that if either party disrupts this element of it, buckets of water fall on them, so to speak. So yes, all bets are off if and when this is ever set aside by one party or the other. Could I just mention while I'm at it that in good faith, as concerned residents of the city, I think this is what Sue's letter probably relates to, having not read it, but we've talked about this. The planning commissioners had some comments that were important to them, but kind of extraneous to the finding of general plan consistency that was before them. That issue has been raised in Sue's letter, and it's been raised by some of the commissioners who might have shared those sentiments. They will be reflected in the minutes of that meeting, but they have no bearing whatsoever on this outcome. And I've written Sue to reassure her that it's my opinion that they couldn't affect title to this no matter what they said. Title to the conveyance, as it will rest in their hands following the issuance of the grant deed.
So let me just finish my thought by saying, the precedent that this sets is just concerning me that we're giving away property for free. I don't think I've participated in that on my time on council yet, and so I do have concern with that, but like everybody else on council, I'm excited to put this all behind us and move forward. So
that was the part of the price of the global settlement. Yep. Thank you.
Yes, I think, and I echo what Chris is trying to get at, which is we just want to make sure this is finally done. And I think everybody wants to be there. So I'll move. Chris, you do the honors.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
So motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Thank you all very much.
Next is item P, Code Enforcement Legal Services. P as in Paul.
This is a card with a 6P on it, and that's it, in red writing.
That's me, but I'm glad to.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Sorry.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, Mike Johnston, Management Analyst with the City Manager's Office. The item before you tonight is a contract with Silver and Wright LLP for criminal citation support and for code enforcement legal services, which includes receiverships, nuisance abatement, and other code enforcement related services. Silver and Wright has assisted the city in the past with successful prosecution of municipal code violations, receiverships over substandard and blighted properties, and nuisance abatement. Some of their work in the city thus far has been cost recoverable, and to date the city has recovered $167,000 in various city costs, unpaid fines, and abatement costs and fees. Because of Silver and Wright's success with quality of life issues that are important to the city's residents, staff is recommending new contracts for both code enforcement legal services, which would be a not to exceed amount of $186,000 annually, and criminal citation support services, which would be an annual retainer for an amount of $99,600, but that would exclude any services for trials or appeals. If any of the cases went to trial, then staff would return to council for approval through a designation of legal fees. The retainer for criminal citation support is a cost savings measure because in the past these services were on a time and materials basis, and the retainer will allow the city to pursue more criminal prosecutions without incurring additional costs. Both contracts before you would be renewable annually and subject to approval through the annual budget adoption process. So with that said, the draft contracts are attached to your agenda report this evening, and I'm available for any questions. And if there aren't any immediate questions, we also have Matthew Silver here, who is ready to report and share a brief presentation of his services and talk more about his work in the city.
Okay, any questions of Michael?
I have one, if I may. Mr. Johnson, since the city's entered a contract with Silver and Wright since 2017, did I do my math right? Have we paid about $600,000 if we include tonight's contract? Does that total about $600,000?
So to date, we've spent, since 2017, we've spent $509,000. That does not include tonight's contract.
$509,000, we've recovered $176,000.
$176,000 of that $509,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Silver?
Do we want to hear from the person who pulled the card before we? I mean, that way it could be targeted responses, or,
Sure.
I mean, I'm more than willing to hear.
I'm more than happy
Well, we'll
to.
give you a chance to respond if we need to, so.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, I'm more than happy to do it in whatever procedure you like, and if there are questions, even after this presentation, that the council would like me to respond to, I'm always happy to. My name is Matt Silver. Thank you, Mr. Johnston, for that introduction. I am the city's code compliance attorney. I am the city prosecutor. So my job here is twofold, and you see the contracts, which I'm going to address in a moment here tonight. One is to continue supporting the Orange County Sheriff's Department, which is our local PD. And I really appreciate the opportunity from the city council and city staff to be able to address the public directly. This is not an opportunity that I frequently get, but I very much appreciate that because I take tremendous pride in the fact that I feel like I'm doing a good for the community, and hearing you, ladies and gentlemen, in your public comments today and in other times I've been here, I feel as though there is a need for these services. That being said, whether to continue this program is purely up to the council, not me. It's perfectly okay if you decide not to. For some background for the public, in about July of 2018, the city asked me to start enforcing municipal code violations that the Sheriff's Department is issuing. So the Sheriff's Department, the police officers on the street, may issue citations for a wide range of issues. I've heard a lot of those issues brought up as a concern tonight by members of the community. To give you an example of some of the issues that they cite for that are referred to me, defecation in public, urination in public. These are certainly very concerning and sanitary problems. People being drunk in public, alcohol, and therefore also drinking alcohol on public property, trespassing on the public's property, violating beach and park curfews. And I want to clarify with respect to that, these aren't incidental curfew violations. These aren't like one-offs.
This is a consistent, repeated problem that we're trying to address. And then we do have some limited smoking prohibitions in the city in public areas where kids and families and other folks congregate. And so the police department, the sheriff, will issue citations to folks in the field who violate these laws as they see fit based on their training, and then they refer them to me. When I first came on board, my first question was, why does the city have to enforce these? Well, the answer to that, as became quickly evident, is that they simply were not being enforced. Citations that the police department, and I'll refer to them as the police because they are our police, but they're the sheriff, citations they were issuing in the field were simply not being filed or prosecuted. And if they were, they were just being thrown out. And I think that raised some concern about whether there was support and integrity to our code being enforced for our community. So in any event, I was asked to enforce those. Our goal is a little bit different than maybe other law enforcement goal. Our goal is not punishment. Our goal is simply compliance. That's code enforcement as a whole, everything I do. We just want compliance with the city's laws like everybody else is asked to comply. As a community member, myself, where I live, I want people to live by the same rules as I do. So I think that's an interesting point, rather, because when I go to court, my goal isn't just to whomp someone over the head, so to speak, for lack of a better phrase. My goal is to bring them into compliance with the law and hopefully encourage them not to violate the law in the future. In other words, deterrence. So towards that end are the plea offers that we make and the rulings we seek from the judges here in Orange County Court are not meant to just simply throw people in jail for the sake of jail. These are all violations of the municipal code. These are all misdemeanors. These are all punishable by up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine apiece. I'm never asking for that. What I seek are remedies tailored to the specific violation I may face, and those range from things like ordering people through the judge into alcohol treatment who may have alcohol problems, ordering people into homeless shelters in other parts of the county perhaps where there are those services available so that they can try to break the cycle and get those services in those places where they may be offered. Putting people on probation with terms that they don't violate laws in the future or there will be additional consequences for that. Sometimes there is jail. Jail is usually reserved when we ask for it is because someone has repeatedly violated the law. They're just not willing to comply and or they have refused to show up to court for their court hearings. As you can imagine, the judges aren't very pleased and a warrant issues for those. So, and the last one I'll mention is stay-away orders. These are situations where we seem to have a problem with people being drunk and defecating on some of our train platforms, for example, and in our beach areas. So we may ask the judge to order them to stay away from those areas where they seem to repeatedly go to violate the law. And as I've heard from our members of the community today, there are clearly some of those issues that are out there. So I don't intend to put the words in the Sheriff's Department's mouth. They can speak for themselves if they were here today. But I do feel that it's been a successful program. There's obviously a lot more to do. But in my just professional opinion, regardless of what you decide is perfectly fine, is simply that there is a resource to help give integrity and meaning to our municipal code. I do not enforce the penal code or the health and safety code. My only jurisdiction is our local code. And so perhaps if there's any questions, I can take those on this item before I cover the code enforcement one. Mayor, if that is acceptable?
Questions?
Okay. And really quickly, I actually proposed this idea of a flat rate. That's the retainer language that Mr. Johnston referenced. The reason I proposed that was because I want to put my money where my mouth is, so to speak. I'm here with the opportunity to speak to the community and the council publicly, and I do that. I do this line of work because I feel strongly about the integrity of local laws and community quality of life. And so what I don't want to have happen is that our sheriff's department says, well, geez, if I call Matt, it's going to cost more money. Or, geez, if I try to enforce the law here, it's going to cost more money. So what I proposed, even though it's actually a reduction in what the my fees would be if it was on an hourly basis, and I'm happy to do it, is something that I hope will show that we are committed to the community and we're able to be a resource for the sheriff's department without worrying about budgets and stuff. This is just a set, flat rate. I may come to regret it. I may come to in a year. I reserve the opportunity, if this just goes nuts, to come back to you in a year, but I'm willing to give it a shot, and I hope the council will consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silver. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment and just remind the council how we got to this point. So our former mayor, Steve Schwartz, ran on the idea that he was going to bring a city prosecutor to the city. And after elected, he actually brought that to the council, and this is one of the things that we voted unanimously to bring forward. We hear every day, and this meeting is no different, that we have quality of life issues here in San Clemente that need to be addressed locally, that aren't being addressed at the county level, and we've done that through Mr. Silver. So I think he's done good work. Doing the math on what we heard from Mr. Johnstone, we essentially spent $332,000 for our own district attorney over the last 2 years. I feel like that's a pretty fair value for what we've gotten in return. So thank you for service this far. I can't wait to hear what the public has to say.
Thank you, sir.
And I'd like to comment on your flat fee. I appreciate that you're doing that. I think one of the reasons why you probably have is because in the last couple of years you've put in the groundwork and the foundation, because we've gotten everything going and all our programs going, and we've gone through the municipal code and we've strengthened it anywhere where it needed to be. Thank you for that help, and Scott too. We definitely have done that. So I hope you can stay within the flat fee. I hope that all the work we've done and all that code enforcement has done also, all the groundwork and foundation that we've done in the last 2 years, we're going to be able, this will be a better program. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, regarding the costs, I know Councilmember Ham just said $332,000. You said in 2 years we've spent $509,000.
I think, well, that's a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up. I'd like to add some clarity to that. There are two hats that I wear for the city. There's the hat I wear as prosecuting the city's municipal code violations. That's not anywhere near that number. That number includes the number you just mentioned, Councilperson Ferguson, includes the Sheriff's Department stuff, which now we're recommending just the flat rate for however number they're proceeding with citation-wise. The other part is enforcement of the city's housing codes and community standards, the municipal code. And so the other component to that, I think probably the majority of it, I venture to guess, is defending the city in appeals, some pretty big item appeals. One contract amendment that I think might have been included to the council was an appropriation for, I think, $200,000 for one really heavy case that the city asked us to include. We actually, I don't have the number for you right now, I wish I did, but I very much believe we came in well below that number on that. The other matters we're asked to deal with are things like incredibly substandard housing issues. One was, I don't want to go into the address, but one was referenced earlier by a member of our community here, where the neighbors were frankly fed up with a house that is so bad the courts ordered it demolished. So those kinds of things, and then helping the city try to make its code enforcement process ever improving and more efficient. Where there is an opportunity that state law allows for cost recovery and the court allows it, we seek it. Criminal is not that opportunity, so the OCSD stuff would just be a decision the city needs to make whether it wants to invest in that or not. There is no cost recovery element, nor do we seek one for that.
Okay, but we have 6 staffers in code enforcement.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, costs us $1.2 million a year.
Okay.
All right. So if you're doing all these things, what are they doing? I have heard from some complaints from residents this week regarding a person who with a disability who, can't have her, got a citation for having her trash can in the wrong place. So we're remedying that. And then someone else was cited by code enforcement because of a patch of weeds that were like 2 inches by 2 inches. So we got 6 people in code enforcement, $1.2 million a year, right? And then we have this contract for $376,000 a year. So what are all the 6 staffers doing if you're supporting the code enforcement with all the long list of wonderful enforcement that you are doing?
Sure. So to be clear, I think the number you're referencing, Councilperson Ferguson, is for the city staff, code enforcement department?
$1.2 million a year for city staff.
And then the budget we're requesting is $186,000 for our legal services for the current fiscal year that we're in. That's like the total for the year. I have the benefit of working with code compliance staff and Mr. Atamian all the time, and I can tell you, working with many other jurisdictions, that what they're doing is a lot. They're very busy. I can't speak to the weed issue, the weeds issue, or other garbage issues, trash issues. Those aren't referred to me. I deal with kind of the heavy hitter cases where people have just not responded to notices or refused to comply, or they're really heavy duty health, life safety issues. But I can tell you that traditionally code enforcement personnel have hundreds of cases that they deal with, per person throughout the city. And for each case, that involves 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 notices. Sometimes it can involve meetings. Sometimes it involves citations that they're issuing. And so I think what's happening is code enforcement has a just massive load on its plate. And of course, they're trying to enforce our code with the ever-changing state laws that are coming down our way and the cases, court cases. So they're always trying to figure out how to efficiently, effectively do it.
Okay.
I can't speak to the budget because I'm not part of that budget.
Right, and what we're approving tonight actually is $376,600 for the 3 line items.
I think the third item may be just an appropriation of funds, but I think what we're approving, or perhaps approving, Councilperson Ferguson, is $186,000 for the fiscal year in total for the code enforcement support we provide, and $99,600 as the flat rate for the sheriff. I don't think that third one for $91,000 is an addition.
Yeah, so you're supplementing the code enforcement and you're helping the sheriffs. I just don't see the cost recovery on this as, we're not even 40% of the cost recovery for, the services, plus paying $1.2 million for a full staff for code enforcement. I work at a city that's pretty much exact in geographic size and population, and we have half the number of code enforcement and don't have a program like this, and have a sheriff's department. But anyway, I just see this money better spent on another deputy for our town. But I appreciate your presentation tonight. Thank you so much for the work you've done. Thank you.
Certainly. If I may just make a quick note on the cost recovery, there are just simply some cases where cost recovery is not permitted, or it's not just. It's just not fair. Where it is supported by the law and where it is fair and equitable, we do seek that. But it just, as a taxpayer myself, I understand the concern very much so, and of course I understand your position. But anyway, I just wanted to add clarity to that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
There was one thing I did want to add that I forgot to mention previously. And when we discussed this item initially with Steve Schwartz, one of the things I did was reach out to the sheriff's deputies themselves and talk to them and see what their thoughts were. And a common theme amongst the deputies was a lot of these smaller citations that they would issue in terms of their overall purview of their job, which come back to quality of life issues, aren't being addressed at the county level. And so it'd be very helpful if they got some teeth behind them to support the work they were doing in the field. And so this was an opportunity to do that, so.
Sure. I know Adam's in the audience as well and probably wasn't wanting to speak, but the question was asked about what code and compliance staff is doing. My understanding is that Mr. Silver goes to court and enforces the citations that you folks issue and the administrative findings and all that you folks issue. Is that a very good basic understanding of sort of the dichotomy between?
In simple terms, Mayor Pro Tem, that's correct. Code compliance has about between 3,000 and 3,500 complaints a year that turn into somewhere between 1,700 and 2,000 cases a year. We try to address as many of these cases administratively as we possibly can. Our goal, while we do need to issue citations from time to time, is not to punitively fine people, but I'd much rather see people invest the money to fix an issue than pay our fines. But there's a point in time when administrative remedies don't work, and people either they get attorneys involved, and then we're administrative staff dealing with attorneys, and that's when we need our own attorneys. Or it becomes such a complex issue that it really requires more than code staff can possibly do. So when they take it over, it's gotten to a point that it's turning litigious. a lot of our work doesn't get to that point. And a lot of the stuff that we do is not seen by the general public. And I don't tend to go out and explain to the world everything that we do, because it invariably hampers our ability to be so effective. But I will tell you this, code compliance does a lot of things in various ways around the city. Some of the things we do are public safety related. We do a lot of support for OCSD. We do a lot of support for some of the biggest issues that this city has faced in the last couple of years. When sober living homes were an issue, that was code compliance that dealt with that. Vacation rentals, that was code compliance. The homeless issue, we do a lot to support our deputies in that work. And an example of it is the deputies deal with trespassing. And if they have to write a citation, Matt Silver and company will prosecute. But there's still a whole encampment that's left over. And the only people that can deal with that is code compliance. So, somebody needs to do the work that code compliance does. And I will just say, speaking for myself, we run a very efficient ship here. I don't know what other cities do in terms of their support with law enforcement, but I do know what we do, and it's really a tremendous amount of work. And then beyond that, we do a lot of quality of life stuff. A lot of stuff falls more in line with economic development, making sure that all of our businesses are complying with our code, and such like that.
Mr. D'Artagnan, may I ask you to, Mr. Van Nuys spoke tonight, and he said he got the citation, and it's a $200 fine, and to appeal it, it would cost him $750. He had to pay that out of pocket just to appeal for a $200 fine. Did that program, the appeals program, and making the citizens pay for that just to appeal their government, did that come about in concurrent to hiring Silver and Wright in 2017, or was that prior to?
That came out afterwards, and I believe that was something that the city attorney's office worked on. That wasn't Silver and Wright specifically.
Okay, it's very egregious, it sounds like, but thank you.
Any other questions, comments before we get to public comment? Great, thank you, Mr. D'Artagnan, for jumping up. Mr. Malamud, followed by Rick Leffler.
Laura raised a funny question because it did grow out of Silver, Matt Silver. By the way, he's a great lawyer, and you should definitely hire him. We went to battle over the signs in the city for quite a while. $1 million of fines by adamantium. There is a lot of stuff we need to investigate over code enforcement and their relevant things. Pete Van Nuys citation should never done. I got 2 that should never been issued. The basis upon which they issue them are not even correct. They're not even statutorily correct. That's not Matt Silver's problem. So what happened was, after we went to battle, the city council before you, Chris was there, I think, not sure if Kathy was there, decided to punish people who appeal citations, and you have to now pay unless you win. So for a $100 correction notice, if you lose, you're now required to post bonds. I came and spoke against it. This council needed to reverse that policy. It's just unfair. Pete Van Nuys shouldn't have to pay $750 to appeal a $200 fine. That's makes insanity look good. But on this issue, directly, and we have way too many code enforcement officers. The fact they issued 2,000 citations, pick the important issues. We don't need that many people. We added 2 recently because this council was worried about it. Well, we've gotten rid of a lot of the issues. We got rid of the rental properties, we got rid of the drug homes, we got rid of these things, yet as government does, and I'm going to cite it to you later, we're growing 23 to 30% per department over the last 2 years. We're growing exponentially, everybody else is cutting back, and we're broke. Don't forget that. On this issue, please approve this. The flat fee arrangement is something I've suggested to clients for 30 years. It's a great arrangement. Dan knows it also. Steve, Matt may be unhappy he did this deal because now there's no restraint on the city giving him work. However, he can readdress it in a year. But it's really a proposal to work with us. We haven't seen that kind of stuff from other law firms. It's something we should investigate in other areas. But I'm just going to vouch for, I fought him for months, a year, And I will say he's a charming man, and he's a great lawyer, and we did battle, and it wasn't antagonistic, it was straight up, and that's kind of Dan and I like to fight. That's a good battle. And if you lose, you lose. If you win, you win. We settled the case. That's always a good victory for everybody. Thank you so much, and approve his contract.
You didn't scare him away, Brad. It's incredible.
There is always one.
Mr. Leffler.
Okay, Chris, we are of one mind. Stand by. This is going to be a momentous occasion. As a citizen that benefited from Matt's hard work, I'll just tell you, and Kathy Ward's hard work, and Mayor Schwartz's hard work, I'll tell you, I live in a community that had a hoarder for 20 years. Abandoned vehicles, broken windows, rats, just horrible. I moved into the neighborhood 2.5 years ago, and I said, what are all these cars, all this junk here? Well, they're just not going to do anything about it. So, well, this can't be right. So we had a public meeting at my house, had Kathy, had the mayor, had Matt, and all the citizens spoke, said we can't sell our houses. We had 3 houses for sale, had been for sale for 2 years, couldn't sell their houses because of this. And I looked at Matt, and Matt said, give me 60 days, I'm gonna deal with this. And I said, you're gonna have to show me, Matt. I've heard it, I don't believe it. 60 days later, the house is in receivership. The 3 houses for sale sold within 2 weeks after that happening. Quality of life in my neighborhood has gone up immensely, and it was because of Matt's hard work. So that's my personal experience. Going past that, if you pass this train ordinance where you have a ticket on the train or not on the train, or if it's smoking, whatever, Matt's going to be the guy that's going to enforce these. No sense in having these municipal codes if nobody's going to enforce them. Matt's going to enforce them. As a ex-law enforcement officer, thank goodness, I can tell you that we need the support of the prosecutor. That's when you start saying, we're not going to write the tickets. We're not going to enforce it. You know why? Because they're not going to prosecute it. Matt will prosecute them. And on the thing on the money, I don't know that much about money. I was always a public servant, so we just had unlimited money. It wasn't really a problem. But I know this, that law enforcement, code enforcement, it's not always going to be cost effective. It's not going to be. He's not going to bring in as much money as it's going to take him to prosecute these cases. But you know what? You can't put a price on the quality of life in the city because of what he does. And we have a treasure here. We got a lot of treasures in this city. Matt's one of them. And if we lose him and just get somebody who's going to be nonchalant, well, maybe I'll prosecute, maybe I won't, it's going to affect the quality of life. So again, I know he's not, I'm thinking maybe he's going to be more cost effective. He's promising to be, and I'll tell you, he's always told me the truth, so I believe him. But please, let's not look at this as a dollars and cents issue. Let's look at this as a quality of life issue in San Clemente. Please approve this contract so we can continue the fight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. Clearly, you talked to Matt about the outcome of that case. I have a question as well. So for the question, I've litigated against Matt as well, and I know Matt to be a fantastic attorney, an honorable attorney. No question at all about his work ethic or his abilities. I know firsthand because we've exchanged nasty emails at midnight. So my question, though, is we have, as part of our retainer with our city attorney, we have the ability to do code enforcement, things like that, through Best and Krieger. So we're taking on an added expense there as well. And I'm wondering, since you've given us such a good deal, how we can sort of magnify the 2 offices taking on these cases to address our quality of life issues. So meaning if we have certain cases that don't have a cost recovery component to them, would it make sense to push those over to Best and Krieger, since a lot of them are covered under our retainer agreement? We're just trying to maximize what we're getting bang for the buck. How would that work? And I'm just want to make sure, because I'm going to look at Scott to ask the question, because I'm not entirely sure, is if we have Best and Krieger do more code enforcement stuff, are we losing out on hours that could otherwise go to other things Best and Krieger is doing? That's the question, because if it is, then this is going to short circuit this discussion. But
if I could, Mayor and Council, our agreement provides for non-litigation services under the retainer. And so what that would include is pro forma preparation of review of citations, pro forma preparation of communications back and forth with the court, service. But when it comes to a case, when it becomes litigation, then it switches to the hourly fee. So how those might dovetail, we haven't really thought about. They're either referred our way or Matt's way. I think depending on whether they already tie into work we're doing, and kind of if they're complex and in his niche, then they'll go his way. So that's kind of how it works now, but it's never been dovetailed to the way that you just mentioned.
We do, Mayor, if I may, we do, there are efficiencies in the sense that I want to make sure that I'm communicating with Scott as the sitting city attorney about the big ticket things. Traditionally, when a matter gets maybe taken to Superior Court after an administrative decision, then usually Best Best and Krieger will handle that specific type, or if they have a case already pending that they're already litigating, there's no use in me reinventing the wheel. And so we kind of hand off the reins to them. Efficiency is, I mean, that's an ethical obligation.
All right, any other questions, comments, motion?
I'd like to say that before I move it, I'm going to move staff recommendation, that this is exactly what the people have asked for. 3 years ago, we had people begging us to do something to start enforcing our laws. And so this is what we did in response. We revamped our entire code enforcement. I think it is oversimplifying it to death to say that our code enforcement has to be cost recovery, because I think our cost recovery is our quality of life. That's why we're doing this. We have a municipal code and we couldn't enforce it. So I think everyone would agree that things have been better. I've heard from people that they've been better. This is exactly what people write to us every single day on emails for years now, including this week. So this is something that I think the city council and the staff have been very responsive on, and this is what we've done. This is a course of action we've taken to make our city safer. So with that, I'm going to move staff recommendation for code enforcement legal services.
Motion second by Councilmember Ham. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Passes 3-1. Let's take a 5-minute break. We've been going for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
Call the meeting back to order.
The public hearing process includes a staff presentation, a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes, and public testimony not to exceed 3 minutes per speaker. Following closure of the public hearing, the City Council will respond to questions raised during the hearing, discuss the issues, and act upon the matter by motion. The first public hearing on the agenda is zoning amendment 1920. That's a continued public hearing to consider a city-initiated amendment to the city code regarding the regulation of secondhand dealers, thrift stores. Staff is recommending that this public hearing be continued to the City Council meeting of December 3rd.
Do we have any comment cards for this?
No, sir.
I'll make a motion to continue it.
I'll second.
Motion second by Councilmember Ham. All in favor? Aye.
Okay. The next public hearing is to consider a city-initiated proposal to amend San Clemente Municipal Code Title 17, the zoning ordinance regarding non-conforming mobile homes and mobile home parks.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Jennifer Savage, Senior Planner. The item before you, the proposed amendments, would clarify definitions and exceptions in the non-conforming provisions in the code. It would also expand the state and federal regulations within that same non-conforming provisions section. The amendments would clarify that within the special use provisions, which govern the uses for new mobile homes and new mobile home parks, that those provisions would not apply to existing mobile homes and existing mobile home parks. This concludes staff presentation, and staff and the city attorney are available for any questions.
I don't have any questions. Any questions from the dais?
No.
Great report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your very brief, to the point presentation. Do you have any comment cards?
No.
I'm sorry, I got to gavel the public hearing. No comment cards, so I'll close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion, if I may. Make a
Please.
motion?
Yes,
All
please.
right. Make a motion to adopt staff recommendation.
Excuse me, I had a comment card regarding an item.
Regarding this item?
Nope. City attorney's comments?
We're in public hearings.
Okay.
At the end.
Okay, pardon me.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adopt staff recommendation to, one, find and determine that the proposed amendments are not a project as defined by the state CEQA guidelines, sections 15378B2 and 15378B5, and number two, introduce ordinance number 1685 entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, California, amending subsection 1728190A, section 1772020, subsection 1772030C3, and subsection 1772060E of Title 17 of the San Clemente Municipal Code to clarify standards regulating non-conforming mobile home and mobile home park uses.
Motion and second. I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, before you get to C and D, I just want to disclose that I've participated with staff in bringing those forward to you. Christina Talley's here to sit with you as the hearing body, and I'll be available to answer questions, Jeff.
Sure, and really quickly before you do that, a point of order, just
Sure,
for my
thank
own
you.
edification, and hopefully it'll help my members, because I don't know the answer to this, but when we waive the full reading of resolutions and ordinances, that means we don't have to read the whole thing, right?
Oh, you have to read the title, but not the rest of the ordinance.
Okay, so I just, you did a great job, and Chris always reads really quickly, but I just want to make sure that if I read one, I know that. So.
No, you did it. Yeah, that's what you have to do.
Joanne, you want to confirm that? Did you,
Yes, you read the title.
title only?
If it's a resolution, you don't even have to do that, but an ordinance, you do.
Great, I always love your radio voice, but.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna. So I am going to recuse myself from this item. I represent the Reserve Maintenance Corporation, which is impacted by this permit application, so I will recuse.
Okay, this is a public hearing to consider an appeal of conditional use permit 18534, AT&T small cell in the public right-of-way at 8018 Camino, Vera, Cruz. And staff is recommending that council table this conditional use permit pursuant to tolling agreement number 3.
Do we have any speaker cards?
No.
So we'll open and
Not
close
on
the
this
public
one.
hearing, and then I'll move staff's recommendation.
I'll second that. So that in effect tolls use permit 18-534.
It's tabled.
Before you vote, just wanted, for the record, make sure it's clear that the public hearing has already been opened and closed in this matter, so you were just continuing it from before.
Thank you.
Next item is public hearing to consider an appeal of conditional use permit 18-535, AT&T small cell in the public right-of-way at 1101 Calle del Cerro. And I do have a card on this one.
Okay. Is public hearing closed on this already?
The public hearing has been closed. You closed it at the last meeting.
So can we still take comments on this?
You would need to reopen the public hearing in order to take further testimony on this matter.
Okay, I think we have an AT&T representative here, Mr. Orozco. Okay, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and keep the public hearing closed, and, okay, thank you. All right, so I'll move to table this item per staff recommendation. Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0.
Next item is a report from the city attorney concerning the possibility of introducing an ordinance to add Chapter 12.40 train stations to the San Clemente Municipal Code relating to ticket-required areas of the city's transit facilities.
Thank you, Ms. Talley.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem and Council, let me just get to the right place. Yeah, as indicated in the staff report, there are various agreements among various levels of government that end up with the city of San Clemente responsible for the maintenance and security of its train stations. The one at the Pier Bowl and the second one at North Beach. There has been a stream of testimony before this council about those two issues as relating to our train stations. Issues relating to security, people coming and going, and most importantly, the issue that has to do with riders on the trains being really hostage and bound by the direct line that they have to make between their cars and the open doors of the train. You have nowhere to go except from your car to the platform and waiting there kind of hostage for the train doors to open until you get in. By contrast, if you're riding the train, especially if you need assistance or some other help getting from the train to your car, you have to get off the train and be confronted by whatever waits you there. With people there loitering, camping, doing things other than waiting, than going to a train or coming from a train, that impairs the city's ability to keep those platforms secure, and also impairs the sheriff's ability to sort people out and decide who really has business with transportation there. You considered similar issues with regard to panhandling at ATMs. If you're waiting for your money or your card to come out of an ATM, you're hostage to that situation. And the city adopted some pretty strenuous regulations last year in that regard. What these ordinances do is provide the opportunity for public works staff to designate on the San Clemente train platforms a yellow line, let's say, after which, when you pass that line, you have to be in the business of waiting for a train with a pass, or purchasing a pass, or engaged in assisting someone coming or going from their ride on the train. Once that demarcation occurs, the vehicle code and your municipal code will allow citations to be issued for people who are on that secured area, let's call it, without being in the business of one of those three legitimate activities described in the ordinance. So it's presented to you for first reading, and I don't think we did an urgency ordinance, did we? No. This is for first reading and the city's consideration for adoption at this next meeting.
Okay, any questions? A motion? I'll make a motion.
Card.
Yep.
If I gave you a card.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did. You're right. I'm sorry. Mr. Leffler, please, public comments.
I was mesmerized by the conversation.
My wife said I had that effect on her as well.
Really? Yeah, okay, this measure about having the ticket on the train platform, it sounds ostensibly like a really good idea. I know other counties, I think in LA County, actually, they have the same thing. I know in LA City, they do down in the train station there. The only issue I have, it's like the issue of everything, is if you ask the OCSD if they will enforce it. It seems that there's times when Sheriff Barnes kind of picks and chooses what he wants to enforce under the blanket of, Martin versus Boise. But I think keeping in mind that we should bifurcate this, and a lot of people look at this as a homeless issue. It shouldn't be. It's a safety issue. I mean, having people up by those train tracks is a safety issue. And maybe when you address it with Lieutenant Manhart, I'm sure it comes first, is this will be universally enforced. I mean, that's if I'm up there hanging, putting pennies on the track, or anybody. It's not a homeless issue. It's a safety issue of the train tracks. And I'm sure the homeless, if you put a yellow line like Scott suggests, which sounds like a good idea, you're going to have homeless or anybody right up to that yellow line, I'm sure, which is fine, but they won't be on the train track. So again, I fear that when you bring up all these municipal codes we're talking about, is somehow they get pointed under this guise of anti-homeless. And while homeless people certainly will be affected, we will all be affected. And that's just the way it is, It's like I say, it's a safety issue. So let's try to, as a community, and I know as a council you already do bifurcate it, but as a community, let's remember, this isn't us against the homeless on all these issues. This is us making the county, the city a better place to live. So that's what I have to say, and I hope it passes, and I hope we can get some enforcement, because I know Matt will be ready to prosecute it if we do get some citations. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you, Rick. Great comments. Okay, so I agree with those comments. I'll adopt them as my own. So I'll make a motion to adopt staff recommendation that the City Council, one, consider and introduce the titled ordinance, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Clemente adding Chapter 12.40 train stations to the San Clemente Municipal Code relating to ticket-required areas of the city's transit facilities, and 2, instruct staff to prepare and post adequate demarcation and signage at the city's train stations. So a motion by me, second by Councilmember Ferguson. All in favor? Aye. Passes 4.
Okay. Next is a report from the city attorney concerning the possibility of introducing an ordinance to add section 12.28.030 to the San Clemente Municipal Code relating to tents in city parks.
You want a quick staff report, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem? We're trying to keep these ordinance titles short for this very reason, and so we're especially proud of this next one. It's an ordinance of the council that recognizes the public's desire for shade and some privacy at city parks, but also the importance of public safety as people inhabit parks in four-sided tents. What this ordinance does is prohibits four-sided tents in city parks. It will allow still easy-up devices and other shade shelters, but it won't allow four-sided tents unless, except where the shelters have two sides completely open to the public view. And so with that, we present that to the City Council, recommend that it be introduced this evening.
Great. Do we have any comment cards? Joanne? Comments? So I just add again that this is not a homeless-specific ordinance. This is a safety ordinance. I've heard time and time again from sheriff's deputies that if they can't see into a tent, it's effectively like a domicile and they can't address what's going on inside of there. So particularly with parks, with kids around, all that, we felt, the beach, we felt that this was a prudent ordinance to undertake. And as the staff report indicates, a lot of other cities are doing the same. So again, just wanted to make sure this is a all-encompassing broad ordinance. So that motion, I'll go for it again. So I'll move staff recommendation, introduce an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Clemente, adding section 12.28.030 to the San Clemente Municipal Code relating to tents in city parks. Second. Motion by me, second by Councilmember Ham. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Passes 4.
Oral Communications Part 2, I have 2 cards.
Mr. Orr, and then is it Warren Vidrine? Vidrine? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith had brought up about the breeding season in the preserve, and I know the other week we handed out pamphlets on the habitat, the different animals that are there. And I don't know if you know what the breeding season is there, but it does start in January, and it extends through the end of August. I called the lead biologist at the preserve to go over some of these numbers, and they came directly from her. In January, it's the red-tailed hawk starts the breeding season, and then in February, it's followed by the coastal gnatcatcher and the burrowing owl. And I don't know if you know about the gnatcatcher and the preserve, but they started with 3 breeding pairs just not too many years ago. This past year, the count was 32 pairs, and those 32 pairs had 65 babies. Now, not all of them are going to survive. You'll have predation, things with the weather, hopefully not being walked on, which we're very concerned about because we're seeing a lot of temporary campsites set up in the middle of the night, and I think what's happening is some people, possibly in a Pico camp, where they're not allowed to do certain things, kind of migrate over in the middle of the night, and we end up finding, a lot of paper towels, rubber bands that are used for certain things. And if you walk along the trails now, you'll see about every 5 or 10 feet, there's a new trail cut in, and if you look over, you can see there's about a sleeping bag shape where it's crushing the coastal sagebrush, which is where these animals are nesting. The babies and the pairs that are still there that will be nesting, they've spread out completely through that 100-acre park there. And so they're very well dispersed. They're thriving and doing well and growing. It's still not many, but we're hopeful that there's nothing that changes those numbers. So I'll be coming back probably in months, and I'll get a new count and let you know how the babies do next year.
Great, thank you, Mr. Orr. The question on that: what are we doing in terms of enforcement in those types of areas? Like, including today, we had somebody report that folks were going down into Marblehead Canyon. So what are we actively doing, whether it's OCSD or code enforcement? What can we do? Obviously, at nighttime, we're not sending folks out there, but making sure that folks aren't utilizing those areas for...
Both the ranger staff and the sheriff's department staff are patrolling the areas. Lieutenant Manhart tells me that the homeless liaison officer is going down into Pico Canyon, going into Marblehead Coastal on a consistent basis to see if there's any activity and to catch people going off trail and everything.
And just to get a report to the public so that they have an idea of like sort of the frequency at which we're doing that. I mean, I would like to know that as well, because it is sort of like whack-a-mole, right? Like you can go clear somebody out and then literally an hour later, they sneak back down there. As soon as people
I'll ask Lieutenant Manhart for an update.
I'm not saying we're going to be there 24/7, but if we can at least give an idea as to what.
Yeah.
Warren, Vadrine? Right, gone? Okay.
Okay. City Manager?
I know it's pretty well advertised, but we had this landslide on the beach trail north of Mariposa. We've blocked off the trail, but we're still having problems with people cutting the chains on the fencing. It's very unstable out there. We're still investigating it with the use of a geotechnical consultant. So we would appreciate it if people respected the fencing and the posted signage saying not to trespass. It's for their own safety. There is damage to the structure in the cement pilings holding up the beach trail bridge. So we don't know at this time how stable it is and if it can withstand extra weight from people walking across it. So we'd appreciate people staying off the beach trail as much as possible.
City Attorney?
I don't have anything else to report tonight.
I do have a speaker card for this item.
Could you please bring up my slideshow presentation for my public comments?
Real quick, Dan, if I could just ask for a point of clarification, are we going to allow spirit cards on non-items moving forward?
Yeah.
I don't know. Have we done for reports before?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't think we've done it since I've been here. Given
No,
that there's
there's
no
always a
report, I don't know if
first.
there's any comments.
Jim, did you speak during oral communications?
Yes, I did. Now, this is specifically on the city manager's non-report. Oh, I'm sorry, the city attorney's report.
Are we allowed to speak on reports? I've never seen that.
You're allowed to speak on something on the agenda. And
that is?
I think it's difficult to comment on a report that contains no information. I don't know how Mr. B would do that. I have a feeling it has nothing to do with my report because I'm not given one.
Jim, I want to let you speak again, but I don't see any basis to allow you to do that. I really don't. So, I'm going to say.
So I can't speak addressing the city attorney's
The city attorney
report?
didn't make a report, and there's no content for me to allow you to make a comment on, so I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to let you speak to this.
Okay.
I have to be consistent. to
No, I
everybody.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I have to be consistent to everybody. City Councilmember comments.
I have some
Silly.
comments,
Please.
if I may. Just one, I'd like to propose that we bring a resolution to the next meeting, see if we can get support for that. That'd be the December 3rd meeting in support of the Reducing Crime and Keeping California Safe Act on the ballot for 2020. It's an initiative that proposes to toughen criminal penalties, that would roll back criminal justice reforms implemented by Prop 47 and Prop 57. And this effort is being spearheaded by Keep California Safe, a project of the California Public Safety Partnership Issues Committee, and many cities have signed on in support by adopting resolutions. There's a draft resolution on the website, so it'll be easy to prepare. In OC, there's only one other city, well, if we become a second, City of Tustin is the only city so far in Orange County that has passed a resolution, though OC Sheriff Don Barnes has signed on in support. Thank you.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it does, but didn't we also have, where we asked staff to go to the county? Because there was mention of rolling back 47 and 57, and we asked staff to look into that, so I think we're already doing that. No? Okay. Can you check with the county? Thank you.
Councilwoman Ferguson's.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on Councilwoman Ferguson's comments.
Jim, this is not a time for comment on these items. This
Well,
is not an
it
agenda
involves
item.
funding and whether or not we'll have the funding, proper funding to do what she's proposing.
Tell you what, I'll give you props for ingenuity, but I'm going to deny you.
Well, no, I'm sure I'm not as clever as our crack attorney.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. I have to give everyone 1 minute every time we have this. Again, props for ingenuity, but no.
Well, I'm not pulling in $2 million a year, though.
Any other council member comments?
Yeah, I just want to comment that I missed the Joints Commissions Committee meetings this past month. I was unfortunately out on all 3 of the big fires we had. I was on duty for 9 days straight. I had an 8-hour period where I was not on duty in 9 days. So I hope you guys had a great event. I read the notes from it. Looks like you guys made some good progress and had great attendance. So, well, apologies for not making it.
We missed you, but thank you for what you were doing. Important stuff. So, all right. I'll move that we adjourn to the next regular council meeting, which will be held on December 3rd, 2019, in the council chambers located at 100 Avenida Presidio, San Clemente, California. Closed session items will be considered at 5 p.m. and the regular business meeting will take place at 6 p.m. So motion second, all in favor? Aye.